Dr. Campley.
Here.
Mr. Dorr. Here. Mrs. Evans-Brockett.
Here.
Mr. Fountain.
Here.
Mr. Keenan.
Here.
Dr. Kohler.
Here.
Mrs. Mayers.
Here.
Mr. Saylor.
I'm here.
Ms. White.
Thank you very much. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We have a large crowd tonight. We have some special recognitions to go over. I'm going to hand the floor over to Mrs. Mayers and Dr. Russell.
Well, good evening once again, and we are excited. We have lots of students here tonight, so there's a lot of positive energy in the air. We'd like to recognize a couple of groups. Back at the beginning of the year, Mrs. Smith and I asked our principals to sign up for a month when they would like to recognize something about their students. So we have a group from Skipback that we'll recognize this evening. We have our world language mentors who were really formed and identified this year and did some work the second half of the year. And then we have our PAC champions. And what we'd like to do tonight is start with our Skipback group, move to our world language mentors, and then move through our sports teams that have earned the PAC championship in order of season. And then we'll ask them to sort of spread out in the library and afterwards head out and take some group shots. And I think you're going to be our photographer tonight, Dr. Smith. Thank you. Okay. So we would like Mrs. Nasoy and the Student Wellness Service Project Group from Skipback Elementary. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Mrs. Mayers, and Mrs. Mayers will have a part, and then in some cases the advisor will have a part and move through the names of the students. In other cases, Mrs. Mayers will take care of all of it because it's pretty brief.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. The Skipback Wellness Community Service Project. On behalf of the Perkiomen Valley School Board, recognizing some of Skipback's 5th grade bus safety students for their exceptional involvement in Skipback's Bus of the Month Positive Behavior Program. This program is designed to promote safe, kind, and responsible behavior among all bus riders. These dedicated bus safeties have gone the extra mile by collaborating with their bus drivers to collect and share daily data. This data has played a crucial role in maintaining the safety and welfare of their fellow students during daily bus rides. Their remarkable dedication and adherence to returning nearly all the forms they were given demonstrates their strong commitment and behavior, greatly contributing to the creation of a secure environment for all students on the bus. We appreciate your consistent efforts and dedication to our Bus of the Month Positive Behavior Program. And Skipback Principal Mrs. Nasoy is going to introduce the names, and also the advisors involved were Ms. Graham and also Mrs. Nasoy.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayers. Thank you, everyone, for having us this evening. We're so proud of you. I just want to say thank you so much on behalf of the Skipback staff for all your dedication and your commitment to being a bus safety and really working with us and our bus drivers to ensure being safe, being kind, being responsible. So thank you so much. And also thank you so much for participating in our community service project through our wellness teacher, Ms. Graham. Your participation has been very beneficial. So just to honor this evening, I will call you by name. And are we having just recognizing them this evening? All right. So just kind of raise your hand when I say your name. I'd like to recognize Emily Barker, Madison Bulk, Heather Caldwell, Bailey Carabello, Isaac Fisher, Scarlett Gartzeka, Chloe Grafstrom, Sophie Hayes, Luke Herb, Hannah Hoffman, Ava Johnston, Emmy Nupley, Chase Latchick, Ryan Martin, Will Musnung, Eli Negron, Alana Russell, Matthew Teagues, Leighton Vargo, Anume Verma, Sadie Weekly, Joseph Sampagna, and Claire Zangara. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Congratulations, Skip Back fifth graders, and thank you for coming out this evening. Our next group to be recognized are our high school world language mentors, and this group was formed late in the year really for the purpose of supporting some of our youngest ELL, English language learner students who were struggling to acclimate to our schools. We've seen a big increase in the number of our students who speak a second language and may not speak English as comfortably as they would like. We have some high school students, who were more than willing to step up, and they're bilingual, so they shared that gift with some of our students in the elementary schools, and it was terrific. So I'll turn it over to Mrs. Mares again. So that's the next group that we'll recognize.
The World Language Mentoring Program was initiated in January of the school year. Surveys went out to students to identify those that speak a second language and would be interested in mentoring elementary English language learner students. The high school mentors invested time on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis with their assigned ELL student. Their work was remarkable and made a difference in the lives of these students. They made great connections and have helped to establish a program that is sure to be stronger next year. Thank you to the high school student mentors who volunteered their time, and thank you to Mrs. Charlotte Holman, who invested her time in advising these students and planning for the 23-24 school year.
Hi, good evening, and it's a pleasure to be here. It was such an honor to work with these students, and I'm so excited to have the opportunity again next year. So I'm going to try my best with all of your names. I was practicing. So not everyone was able to attend tonight, but I'm still going to read off all of the names. So we have Carola Balcazar, Benjamin Chalmers, Leila Chudik, Jefferson de Leon Marroquin, Lula Hanefi, Daria Halarkova, Yalishani Jimenez Cruz, Kani Juarez, Prapanor Kwar, Junwoo Lee, Isabel Lee, Aslyn Pepper, Caritza Santana, Lara Schroyer, Christian Seivel, Francisco Soto, Julia Takahashi, and Adwita Tora.
It is good. Thank you, Mrs. Holman, and thanks once again to our World Language Mentors. We do have certificates for all students who are being recognized this evening, and we'll hand those out to the advisors after we recognize all student groups. So the next group up is our football team. They were PAC champions this year. evening, gentlemen. If you could just line up right there, that would be great. So this is our 2022 PAC Championship football team, or at least a good portion of them. Typically on a Friday night, there's like 85 of them out there on the sideline. So congratulations to the group. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Mares and then Coach Heist.
Thank you. The 2022 Perkiomen Valley football team finished the season with an 11-2 overall record. PV won their 5th PAC championship in the last 7 years, defeating Pope John Paul by a score of 21-14 in the championship game. This year's team was led by 32 strong seniors. Season highlights included a thrilling comeback win against Downingtown West High School by a score of 30-29 and a 7-6 victory over arch-rival Springford High School. PV earned the number 2 seed in the District 1 playoffs, winning its first 2 playoff games before falling by 1 point to Central Bucks West High School in the district semifinals by a score of 14-13. 2022 was a very successful year for our football program, and the 2022 senior class has left a terrific mark on our program's history. Congratulations to all members of the football team and also the coaches, who are head coach Rob Heist, Matt Young, assistant coach, Jason Basil, assistant, Tim Connolly, assistant, Don Lindenberger, assistant, Ray Perrone, Tim Walsh, both assistants, Chris Finkbeiner, assistant, Dave Nestor, and Eric Joe Nonson were volunteers. And now Coach Heist is going to introduce his players.
Thank you, Mrs. Mares. I'm just going to do this off the not off the list here because of the kids that are here tonight. This is Andy Keogh, Carson Pasco, Danny Kaler, Aaron Carruthers, Sammy Kaler, Xavier Nunez, Ty Hall, Brad Kersey, Liam McCabe, Hayden Clements, Yanni Satukis. In the back here is J.C. Duggery, Robbie Sturgis, Tim Ledger, not Timmy, Stephen Chowdelli, we call him Chowder. This is Chase Moreno, Braden Perrone, Francisco Soto, Kyle Gallagher, and our quarterback, Patrick McDonald. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You could just file over there. We're going to take a picture in a couple minutes when we're done introducing everybody. Does that work?
File over there?
Yeah. I can just
Please, over
move that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to do a small one and then a large one.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Congratulations once again to our football team. Great entertainment and a great community event on Friday nights during the fall. Appreciate what you do. Not only will students that are PAC champions receive certificates tonight, but they will also receive plaques that we will leave in Mr. Felty's office. So the next athlete up is the PAC champion diver. It is Griffin Crothers.
Congratulations, Griffin. You're a junior, you're a swimmer and a diver, and we are recognizing you this evening for winning the PAC championship in diving. You had a winning score of 396.5, and you now have the 5th highest score in PV history. Congratulations. And I also want to mention your coaches, head coach Mitchell Zakowski and assistant coach Kayla Kengel. Thank you.
Girls basketball. All right, so now we have a team that was really fun to watch this year, our girls basketball team. Next up, Coach John Russo. So I tried to go small, big, small, big.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
They're good. If you line up right along here, that'd be great. Hello. That's good. That's good. Great.
Let's see. Coach Russo?
Yeah, he's right there.
That.
Yep.
Coach Russo.
Coach, you come
Will
over
you come
here
stand?
and
Thank
stand
you.
with Mrs. Maris.
Thank you.
Congratulations again. Thank you.
Girls basketball. The 2022-2023 Lady Vikings went 28-2 on the season, which is a school record for any PV basketball team. They won the Liberty Division outright with a 12-1 record. The girls completed the PAC playoffs with a championship win against Springford, 51-26, in front of a packed gym. It was only the second PAC championship win for our girls program. They entered district play as the #1 seed and defeated Haverford to win the district championship. Congratulations to all the players. And we also want to congratulate the coaches, head coach John Russo, assistant coaches Sam Pagel, Jim Hodson, Dave Rogers, Jim Hodson and Mikey Marcello as JV. No worries. And now Coach Russo is going to introduce the girls that are on the list over here.
Well, Isabella Bacani. She goes by Bella. Quinn Bettinger, Amaya Fowler, Grace Galbavi, Megan Kupetz, Allie Matisish, Grace Miley, Claire Usi, Emily Reefer, Ava Shave, Julia Smith, Lena Stein, Anna Stein, Becky Taylor, Sadie Day, Peyton Mears, Rachel Moretsky, Malay Muzi, Lily Pataccio, Alexis Valoris, and our only senior and captain, Ella Stein.
Wrestling next. Okay, so we would also like to recognize several wrestlers who had outstanding seasons. We'll call up the coaches as well as the wrestlers who are here this evening.
Right, where's Dave? Right
He's
there.
coming. Dave's
Oh,
coming.
okay.
Tim Walsh.
Great. Thank you. Max Tansini. Max is a freshman at PV and set the pins and wins record this year. He's being recognized tonight because he was a PAC champion. He also won the District 1 North Championship and finished 6th in the state. Max is also on the cross-country team and an honor student. Carson Pasco. Carson finished his senior year at PV with a 44-7 record. He finished as a PAC champion this season and also finished second at the District 1 North Championship and qualified to the state tournament. Carson will be continuing his education and football career at Susquehanna University. Gavin Pasco. Gavin had a breakout senior on the mat this year, finishing 42-10. He was also a PAC champion and finished first at the District 1 North Championships. He earned a 7th place medal at the state championships. Gavin is continuing his education and wrestling career at Gettysburg College. And we would also like to recognize the coaches, Dave Thomas, who's the head coach, Timothy Walsh, and Dylan Yutko as the assistants. Thank you so much.
It's okay. All right, so our last team that we would like to recognize this evening, the last group of students, is a group of student athletes, the girls' track and field team. Come on in. Come on in. You're up. If you could just sort of file this way a little bit towards Max, that'd be great.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
And our last student recognition tonight is track and field. On behalf of the Perkiomen Valley School District Board of Directors, I would like to congratulate the Perkiomen Valley Varsity Girls High School Track and Field team on winning the Pioneer Athletic Conference Championship and their undefeated dual meet season. Winning any league championship is never an easy task. It requires a total team effort, and your accomplishment reflects on your commitment to hard work and dedication. Many can see track and field as a sport composed of individuals, each competing in their own specific event. It takes a true spirit of sportsmanship, of camaraderie, and of confidence in something bigger than oneself to earn a championship of this caliber, which the 30 of you have demonstrated throughout the season. Congratulations to each of you. You exemplify the high standard of excellence of PV and make your community proud.
All right, so we have Yemi Adelaide, Emma Alver, Lexi Becker, Juliana Brecht, Naya Brown, Bryn Crothamel, Jane Fisher, Sydney Fitzpatrick, Ava Flicker, Emmy Flynn, Amaya Fowler, Grace Heimbach, Julia Killar, Shay Lafferty, Abby Lieb, Claire Maggie, Isabel Marth, Allison Matisich, Sienna Miller, Mackenzie Owens, Ashley Pickles, Audrey Ramsey, Cassidy Romano, Bella Rolls, Courtney Schell, Abby Schweitzer, Haley Sharkey, Julia Takahashi, Elise Tansini, Lily Tremba, Summer Watts, Emerson Whetstone, and Kiara White.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Coach Petsko. The Perkiomen School Board would also like to recognize the PV High School Track and Field PAC champion student athletes who either won their individual events or won a relay event as part of a team. Additionally, the girls' 4x8 relay team set a new PAC championship meet record in their event. Please join me in a second note of congratulations for the following students on these achievements.
Thank you. Allison Matisich, Mackenzie Owens, Ashley Pickles, Abby Schweitzer, Lily Tremba, Summer Watts, and Emerson Whetstone.
We are also recognizing boys track and field tonight. We are congratulating Ian Johnson. Ian is a junior at PV and won the PAC championship in both the 16 and 3200 this year. Congratulations. And also we would like to recognize the coaches, head coach Joe Petsko, assistant coaches Tom Farney, Tiffany Whitehead, Jason Ekolitz, Alexa Lewis, Henry Anderson, Daniel McFarlane, volunteers Barry Flicker, Kurt Mueller, and Carly White. Congratulations.
Congratulations to all of our students being recognized this evening. Once again, we're going to ask that you file out, if you can. Mr. Saylor, if it's all right, we'll take a recess as a board, and we'll start with the last group recognized as the first picture-taking group, and then we'll file out sort of in reverse order. Dr. Smith is going to help us get some pictures. So we're going to go against the wall under Perkiomen Valley there, okay? So if we could line up, we're going to get a picture of each group.
All right, we're all back? That was awesome. Okay. Nobody said yes? Okay. Anyone have public comment? You have the timer thingy? Hold on 1 second, sir. We just got to get the timer thingy going. First name, last name, borough, and then we're almost ready to rock. All right. Thank you. Yeah.
There we go. There we go. First thing, I just want to. This working? Okay. Hey, Sarah. I just wanted to speak real quickly, briefly about something as far as the safety is concerned. The very first time I ever came down here to speak was to present some concerns I had about safety within the school. One of them being the recent shooting in Tennessee was done by somebody who came right through the front doors after they shot the glass out. I think it would be very beneficial for the school to invest in replacing glass doors and windows with chicken wire, much like the administration offices have in there, that prevent that from happening immediately. That person would not be able to get through said, sort of infrastructure at that point. I think it'd be very beneficial to look into, and I think if we have the funds for other things in the school, that would be probably top priority to make sure that gets done. So the second thing I'd want to talk about is, certainly everybody here knows me, and I would venture to guess that the people that don't probably have a very different opinion of me than reality. This past December, I sat down and had lunch with a board member here that didn't really see eye to eye on some things, and we came to mutually respect each other at the end of the day. So I preface that with saying that, I hope that going forward, others will be able to see the same. Concern I have is directly relating to a member of my family. My family is being bullied directly by a member of this board. I'm not going to say who, but there's a person on this board that was directly bullying somebody in my family. And it's continuing on and won't stop. I brought it to the administration's attention. They're aware of it. My family member has been interviewed and spoken to multiple times and is not the party that's really causing the issue. It comes from the other party. One of the things I just want to make sure is very clear here. When I brought it to the attention of this person, not only did they sit there and threaten me, telling me that I couldn't come to the meeting and speak about it, but they sat there and, quote, "Let me reiterate what I told you before. Speaking at a board meeting, alluding to blank being bullies, whether you say the names will not be tolerated or allowed," whether or not I say the names will not be tolerated or allowed. Additionally, I don't live in an ivory tower, but I do live in a rational, realistic one. I know that I do not tolerate threats kindly, and I will not continue to pander to your irrational and harassing banter. Get some help for my family member and find out why they are continuing these attention-seeking behaviors and leave their family member out of this because of the obsession with this person is not healthy and very concerning. Respectfully, underlined doctor in bold, and then certified school psychologist, indicating this person is a certified school psychologist of this school. That's completely inaccurate. In fact, they don't work for the Daniel Boone School District. They have a fake LinkedIn profile online trying to throw voters off. They work for Lower Merion. So I think the voters should be aware of who they're dealing with here.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak for public comment? All right. Mr. Schaefer, the last one.
I did not think that was going to be so quick.
The last dance, sir.
No one wants to speak on my last night. All right, cool. Couple things here. I feel like we haven't been here in a while, but we have some stuff here to go through. Some of it's going to be a little redundant because we just recognized half the school. So I'll just reiterate. I'm on the male side of this track team, and this girls' team is phenomenal. They put in so much hard work. So being able to see their hard work up close is just phenomenal. So congratulations to them. Next slide. Also going to feel a little redundant. Actually, we didn't talk about these guys. So these are our track and field athletes who made it to the state championship. So on the left is Ian. We did see from him. Then we have Doug Ledger, who throws javelin, Mackenzie Owens, Audrey Ramsey, and Sienna Miller. So congratulations to these five for making it to the state championship, which was 2 weeks ago at Shippensburg. Next slide. Just want to recognize all the other spring athletes we have, all the hard work they put in. Everybody's season is now over. Everybody's season has come to a close. So just want to recognize all the talent and hard work that these athletes put in, from boys and girls lacrosse, polo to baseball and softball. Our athletes put in so much work. So I'm very proud of what we have at this school athletically. Next slide. The PV Art and Food Truck Festival, if you weren't there, you're missing out. I've been to this school 12 years, and this is the first time I went, and I'm happy that I was able to go. It was so much fun. Live music, food, incredible art. It was a great display of our school district's talent and everything we have to offer. So if you didn't make it this year, definitely come next year. Next slide. This was an event that happened yesterday, Washout Cancer. It was a student-led initiative to combat childhood cancer. So yesterday, Mackenzie Owens, Luke Doring, Matt Machete, and Liam House were able to raise over $600 for Alex's Lemonade Stand doing car washes at Brewster's. So congratulations and well done to these students. And then next slide. This was kind of my baby here, so I don't want to take all the credit for it, but I'm a little proud of this. This is Spike Valley, Perkiomen Valley's inaugural Spike Ball tournament, which was held on May 20th, 2023. We had over 75 competitors, and I'm pleased to say that we were able to raise $1,903 for the charity ARC Alliance, which helps people with mental and physical disabilities. So huge thank you to everybody that came out, and huge thank you to Mr. Gary Height. Without his class Nova Lab, this would have never been possible. And if you missed it this year, Spike Valley will be back next year under some new senior leadership. Next slide. I just want to say thank you. It is June 5th, so the school year ends for everybody on Friday. I want to say thank you from the senior class for a phenomenal 4 years. There's only, how many seniors are here? Raise your hand. They can probably attest to it too. So if you see them, wish them well. We all graduate on Friday. And to my underclassmen, you guys still have time left. So we want to thank you for that. And then Matt Schaefer just wants to read a couple things as Matt Schaefer. This is my last board meeting. We've been here for 2 years. It's kind of crazy. I came in with Christian in May of 2021, and we are here in June of 2023. So what an interesting 2 years it has been. I would just like to say a couple thanks. First, thank you to the board. For those who are currently on the board and those who were on the board when we first got here, just thank you for your support. I know not every school district affords students the chance to speak, to voice their opinion as a student body, and I wholeheartedly thank each and every one of you for the opportunity to expound on the accomplishments and the needs of our students week in and week out. I'd also like to thank Dr. Russell for working with student leadership so diligently. We met so often, as class officers and student reps and presidents of different organizations. It was great to have that connection, and we're very lucky to have a very hands-on superintendent. And finally, thank you to the students for entrusting myself, Mr. Seibel, and Ms. Shabria, who cannot be here tonight, this year with your voice. It truly means a lot that you would put that much faith in us, and we're pleased to do our job. I want to leave you with two things. First, for the first 2 Mondays of each month for the last however long, we've gathered together and highlight everything that seems to be wrong with our school district. Shortcomings, faults, blunders, you name it, we highlight it. And while it's important to recognize our flaws, it is definitely part of the process and build upon them. I don't want us to lose sight of who we are. We are Perkiomen Valley. Together, we make up one of the top 40 school districts in the state and are recognized for our scholastic achievement and extracurricular feats in music, athletics, and service, as you got to see tonight. What I think we often fail to realize is that we're all united by one thing. Whether you're at home watching the meetings, whether you're here watching the meetings, or whether you just talk about them with your friends, we all have a vested interest in this school district and the children that go here. So whether you're a student here, like some of us are, or you have a child or a grandchild here, or you just pay your taxes here and you want to come talk about it, recognize that our differences at these meetings are slim and our similarities are much greater. So I wish the best to all of you, all the board members, and to all my future Vikings out there, who there are none in the crowd because they all went home, but to all the future Vikings out there, this is a phenomenal place. This is a great place to do such good things. The world is yours. Perk Valley allows you to take it. So just thank you very much for the time, and that ends my student report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schaefer. I'll keep my report really, really quick. I had the opportunity to look at the yearbook this afternoon when my son came home from school and brought it in. It's extremely well done. I want to thank the administration for the recognitions today. This is absolutely amazing, the leadership throughout the entire school district. And to you, Mr. Schaefer, congratulations on your 2 years as a student representative. You are a true role model to every student in this district. Superintendent report, Dr. Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Saylor. And having nights like this where we have so many students out, I think helps us all to remember why we're here. So, and Matt, I appreciate your words too. Thank you for what you've shared tonight. So my superintendent's report will carry on with some celebrations and recognitions. This is one of our world language mentors, Francisco. And this is the team, a picture that was taken earlier. So this evening I want to celebrate some things that are happening for the high school as well as North Montco, our students that attend the tech school, as well as recognize by name the retirees, and then somebody else who has an accomplishment this today, as well as last days of school. So we continue to try and ground ourselves in what it is we believe in terms of our values. We want to prepare our students to be future ready. We want to nurture supportive schools, and we want to continue to build partnerships in our community. In addition, we've had additional focus areas this year, and Dr. Smith will talk about math proficiency and what we're doing in the areas of math. English language learner proficiency, and you saw some of our ELL or English language learner mentors here this evening. Special education is something we've been really focused on all year and made lots of progress in some different ways. And then, of course, student wellness. As we all are recovering from the experiences of the pandemic and getting back to something closer to the normal we know, we have recognized for some that has been more challenging than for others. And we've really worked to try and provide the resources that are supportive of those students. So celebrations, that's Isabel and her student from Evergreen. We have graduation this Friday night, rain or shine. So Dr. Moss is really excited, and the students are excited, and let's hope we have some weather like we've been having. It's been really beautiful. So 7 o'clock in the stadium. And Mrs. Evans-Brockett has a student graduating this evening, so congratulations to Adam and to you. And then I think we're looking forward to some future years for some others around the table. So it should be an exciting night. North Montco had their graduation ceremony along with their senior awards. This was last week, and I attended, and it was really a nice event. And the students, these are a couple of our students that I was able to capture. That's Kane on the left, and those are 4 protective services individuals. They participate with Mr. Mercon. He is a PV resident and teacher at the tech school, and he has coached several sports for us. And they had a great evening and were recognized in a really nice way. In fact, the auditorium had no seats left, and people had to sit up in the balcony. So it was really nice. Remember, we have 5 schools that are participating in this event, but it was really nice to see all the support, and the ceremony was very nice. Prior to that, so I'm going to go back in time just a little bit. In May, I had mentioned to you that the Senior Project Expo was scheduled on May 4th at the tech school. And I put a couple of pictures in a newsletter or two, but I really wanted to showcase some of the seniors that demonstrated for parents and attendees, and there were a lot of people here that night, some of their work and some of what they've learned in their experiences, and also some of what they're headed into as they prepare for graduation. So these are all our students, and in some cases, their families. So you see different students from lots of different programming in the tech school. But it was really an impressive night and great to see what our students have accomplished and what they've produced. And they are really passionate about the work. So a shout out to them as well tonight. Some more world language mentors, with a student that they work with. So in terms of recognitions, I'd really like to take just a few minutes to call out the individuals who are opting to retire from the district this year, either a little bit earlier this year or this summer. And often in the past, typically it has been the procedure on the part of administration and the board to recognize retirees here at the board level. However, this year, they're going to be recognized by their building level teams. They typically have a luncheon or a breakfast or a special meeting at the end of the year. And I think that's a place where they tend to be really comfortable and they feel supported. So they'll be celebrated there. Kathy Berg works in food service out at Schwanksville. Marie Bleiler is also a support person. Christine Hart is a paraprofessional out at West. Jennifer Dixon has been a paraprofessional. Last assignment was at the high school. Steve Hennessy has been a support person. John Freimeyer, custodian at Evergreen, and Patricia Renard served as our central registrar for a lot of years, and prior to that, supported in special education and even had some other roles. And these individuals have opted to retire this year. We want to thank them. I want to thank them publicly for their service and all that they contributed to Perkiomen Valley, and wish them well in this next phase of their life. On the professional side, the teachers that we are losing this year, Kathy Chesin, a science teacher who started at the high school and shifted to the middle school. Sherry Verbeck is a high school math teacher. Karen Molliver, phys ed teacher who moved into counseling, back to phys ed, so very versatile. Coached a lot of sports for us. Judy Burton, math teacher here at the high school and at the middle school at times. Barb Quintangeli was the librarian at West. She went out a little bit earlier this school year. Melissa Folk taught FCS at Middle School West. Joan Berger, counselor here at the high school, along with Luke Seymour. Cynthia Lind, the nurse out at West. Lee Militello, another counselor out at Middle School West. So it was the year really for us to lose counselors. Wendy Elser, art teacher here at the high school for many years, and Pamela Rosenthal, special education teacher at East. So I would like to publicly again extend a sincere thanks and appreciation for all that they contributed here in Perkiomen Valley, how they contributed to supportive schools and supporting students in school, and they were partners to our students and their families. So a round of applause, if that's okay, to thank them. We have a little gift that we'll present to them, so Dr. Smith and I are going to make our rounds at the luncheons this week and really try and stop at each school to recognize our retirees, as well as those individuals who have earned some number of years of service. They were called out in the fall. We were late getting their gift to them, so we have that to deliver too. So we're excited about doing that this week. And, you know, I've been slipping in the Dr. Smith thing, a little celebration and congratulations to Mrs. Laurie Smith, who is now Dr. Smith. She defended her dissertation today successfully, and that's what it takes. So we even got you a new name tag. Isn't that? All right. And with that, last days of school. So this is it, and it's hard to believe. It seems as if the more we move forward that second semester, the faster it goes. So Friday's graduation, our students are finishing up with 3 half days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I think they're pretty excited. I think our staff are really excited, but I think overall they've had a great year, a better year than maybe some in the past, at least recent ones. So we're excited for them and looking forward to a really positive closing to the school year. Hope to see all of you around the table at graduation, and wishing all a happy, healthy, safe summer. And that ends my report.
Thank you, Dr. Russell. Congratulations, Dr. Smith. Mr. Subers.
I do have one.
Are you serious? Do you really?
I figured I had, yeah.
Okay.
I would take it.
Go ahead.
Board's aware of it, but for the public, we were successful in our attempt to secure the variances necessary for the signage at the school board, and Mr. Weaver and the administration are preparing various efforts to convert that into additional financing and revenue for the district. So I think we continue to have a very cooperative relationship with the township, and we appreciate their approval of the variances in that respect. That's
Well,
all I have.
congratulations to you as well. Yeah. Matt, was that his first time in 2 years? And it was such good news.
Come to some executive session.
Yeah. Any board members have any board or district committee reports they want to talk about or give? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which is presented. Any questions on the consent agenda? Board members may request to have any items removed for discussion. Seeing none, Dr. Campley, all yours.
Okay, Dr. Smith, do you have an Education Committee of the Whole presentation?
Thank you and good evening, and thank you very much. Many of you around the table encouraged me to finish my doctorate, and I very much appreciate that. And Dr. Russell especially, I really appreciate the support. And these are little things, but they do mean a lot, and I just know you're very busy, so that means a lot to me that you remembered to
We have a nice lunch coming up too, so stay tuned.
All right. Well, I like to eat, so. Thank you. So I will, if I'm off my game tonight, I was a little focused on something else this afternoon, so hopefully I will remember all of the pieces of the slides. If not, I know my colleagues will help me out. I do have a relatively long agenda, but I will go quickly through some of the things that have been shared in advance. So curriculum guides, you got 21 guides last month in May. We have a couple of more to present to you this evening. Again, just a reminder, guides are what we teach, and then the resources help us to support that implementation. And these slides, again, they were the same last month, really just remind you of what our guides look like and what each piece is. So the curricular areas in front of you tonight, you can see we have quite a few from the STEM area, and then a couple from humanities that are either revisions or new. Math 7 and Math 8, Mrs. O'Sullivan has worked with our math teachers. You saw Math 6 was presented to you in May. These look very similar. They are just the next progression into 7th and 8th grade. Again, really trying to pay equal attention to, as you can see, the understanding, the fluency, and the application. And the resource was presented last month as well, which was iReady. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade technology education then. It's exciting to present these tonight. We have changed the names of each of the classes, paid attention to where the interests are of our students and what's up and coming in STEM, and have actually been looking at the new STEEL standards. So again, Mrs. O'Sullivan worked with the teachers in this particular area. You see actually 5 courses being presented here, 1 in 6th and then 2 in 7th and 2 in 8th grade. And again, they address the STEEL standards. And over on the bottom right, I know that's really small to see, the resources for technology education are different than maybe a math class. We're not looking for a textbook here. We're not looking for reading material. We're looking for equipment. So this is some equipment to support the integration or the implementation of those pieces of curriculum. And you can see listed there what they are. And I believe there were links available for the board if you want to click on them and actually see those particular items. And then as we presented, moving into the humanities side, Mrs. Folks has worked with our English language arts teachers here at the high school. You had the 9th and 10th grade ELA were presented last month. This is the 9th and 10th grade gifted ELA. So it is the course that if you are an identified gifted education student at the high school, you can participate in either of these 2 classes when you're in 9th or 10th grade. The curriculum is similar to the English language arts curriculum, but it is also allows some freedom in terms of what are those talents and strengths of the gifted students that happen to be in the class at any given time. It does incorporate some of the STEM topics and so forth, and again, considers how do we really encourage that philosophical thinking and discussions for our students. So prompting a little bit of a different spin on the English language arts course. And then K-5 library, this group I have to give accolades to because they've rewritten their curriculum several times over the last couple of years because of the changes to our elementary special schedule. And so with the removal of the elementary Spanish, this now became a 30-day special area again. And so the librarians got together, they looked at their curriculum. It does look pretty similar to when it was 15 days, but we've expanded upon that to really, it's the depth and the breadth of the concepts and giving them more time now to be able to work with those concepts that they had previously taught. I also want to call out on the right there, because of that removal of Spanish, we wanted to be very purposeful. We had talked before about how do we make sure that our students have exposure to cultural experiences and various different cultures and diversity. So you will find in the back of this curriculum, there's just a listing. They went through their collections and identified some texts that maybe could be used for read-alouds that would, serve the purpose of the curriculum as well as exposing students to different cultural experiences. So those were the curriculums. I have, you will notice in there for this month, the resources that were presented last month have now sat for the 30 days and are up for approval this month. There are 2 additional resources that you will see on the approval list. One is Read 180 and one is STAR. Read 180 is a program that the board approved last year for implementation in 22-23 for our high school special education students, a very targeted, very focused intervention for reading. And we had 50 licenses. We utilized 47 of those 50 this particular year. And that chart in the bottom there shows that over 75% of those 47 students made gains in terms of their readability and comprehension. And then it's broken out by how many met their end of year goal, how many have met 2 times their end of year goal actually. And then based upon what Read 180 calls their aim line, you can see that we had the majority of our students also made moderate to substantial substantial gains. So we are really pleased with the results of this. Ms. Aducci is recommending that we continue this into next year. So you will see that on the next slide in terms of that licensing for another year. Then STAR over there on your right, this was also a purchase for 22-23. We purchased STAR Reading for grades 6 through 12, and we purchased STAR Math for grades 6, 7, 8, and then a couple of the courses at the high school. And this year we've given those assessments or those screeners 3 times. We are just still getting in and looking at the data and the results from the end of year benchmarks to be able to ascertain the amount of growth that we made. However, based upon our preliminary look at it, we do feel confident that it is a good tool that we have been using. Further analysis will come. I was planning to present that to you in August when we kind of do our assessment schedule and look at how often are we going to do STAR again. But I did want a preliminary share. I just pulled 9th grade out of there. I know, again, they're very small to see, but you can see on them the student growth percentiles, which is really the percentage of our students that have showed some sort of growth from beginning to the end of the year. So Dr. Sachs and I will be prepared to share more data with you on how we did with secondary, but the recommendation this evening is for grades 3, 4, and 5. So they also conducted a review of STAR and its comparable, let's say, competitors, and STAR continues to come out on top of that when we look at the various resources. And so we are recommending for grades 3, 4, and 5 the application or use of STAR Reading and STAR Math. We used to have NWEA MAP assessments and a program called Exact Path that I guess this was the first year we didn't have either of those really at the elementary level, but pre this year we did, and now we've gone through the investigation and STAR would be replacing those that we had in the past. So you can see on this slide what those costs are for that. So Read 180's renewal, it was about $19,000 for the first year, but a lot of that setup is done, so it is about $12,000. The $10,000 for professional development, as listed there as funded by Title II, might seem like a lot. We've had some turnover and changes in staffing at the high school and special education, so do need to do some additional training, and it is a pretty extensive training that you are required to go through. And then the STAR for the elementary, as you can see there, and that is for, I apologize, it's not on there, that is for a 5-year purchase. That's actually a great price when you compare it to what we paid for our secondary. I think because we've purchased more, they've given us a break with that. So, and this is agenda item 4.02, but it also does, the chart is pretty big because it includes everything that was presented in May. That was a core resource that needed to give you the month to review. Are there any questions on the resources or this agenda item?
Mrs. Mayers?
Thank you. So I have questions. Do you want me to ask questions now about the, this is a little off, that's why I'm struggling here. Can you go back to the curriculum? Thank you.
So these are the areas.
This is what we're talking about right now.
These
Okay.
are the areas that I'm presenting. I don't know what's jumping around.
So
That
I
we're
don't have
presenting now. I know you might have questions about health. I can certainly entertain them now, or if you want to wait, I think that's maybe like 4.06 or something. That's up to you.
Thank you.
I have some questions on 4.02.
Okay.
So the gains that we're seeing with Read 1, with STAR Math and reading, were they the acceptable gains that you wanted from the program? There was a previous program before that we were using, previous resource guide that we were using, curriculum guide. Is that program giving you the results that you want? And when we define a gain, are we looking at 5%, 10%? Because 1% gain from previous is not very actionable. Just how quick, how well is the program working for the renew option compared to what was done before?
Mm-hmm. Good question. So we, I can't speak to the very specifics, as Dr. Sachs and I need to do much more analysis on because we just finished our last benchmark. But my preliminary analysis is, yes, it is showing us the gains that we would like to see. For example, when we had NWEA map, based upon the age level of the students, they would project out how many, it was a RIT score, so how many points, let's say, you would expect a third grader to improve from fall to spring. So that's what we're now trying to equate to STAR, and how much are we expected to show an increase, and then are we reaching that? Again, I can get that information. Dr. Sachs and I were hoping to present that in August. I don't have that today, but preliminarily, we do believe that it is meeting our needs, and students are showing growth.
And I know I had questions prior with when the curriculum came up for Global Citizen. Same questions that I posed last year would fall today on that program in the elementary school setting. But more importantly, when we're looking at third and fourth graders, and those were students that were most impacted by COVID and shutdown, what can we do outside of curriculum to focus on hand-eye coordination skills, verbal skills, where we're seeing not just in Pennsylvania, but all across the country, that really students who are in third, fourth, and fifth grade are a little bit more behind in those aspects. And that's not necessarily curriculum, but when we're talking about things that come forth in global citizenry or other things that'll happen in the K-5 curriculum, which is all app-based development skills, learning how to create a user password, and all those things are great, but what can we do internally to focus on coordination skills, verbal skills, to help the student communicate and get those types of skills that are going to be needed as they continue to develop into middle school?
Yeah, I think what we have seen happening, and certainly Dr. Boyd or Dr. Russell may have thoughts as well, is, really our teachers talking to maybe their previous grade level teachers to understand, well, what did you used to do in second grade that maybe I can now benefit from and show to my kids? I will say to you that teachers are not just relying on apps or just on the computer. They are still doing a lot of those activities, handwriting, eye coordination, different activities in the classroom to help with that. I know the principals have also, through their MTSS, are very carefully tracking the students and trying to identify what groups and what those needs are, and then tapping into resources that we have even within special education to how might somebody who has an expertise share that learning with other teachers so that they can build things just into their regular classroom to help students that may have some of those needs. I don't know if either of you have anything to add to that.
And well, that answer brought up another question. I don't know if it was Freckle or was it Star Math, but one of those programs we talked about had a continuum that stayed in there for the students, that a teacher could look in and see what they were. Was that part of Star Math and Reading, where they could track progress over a course of years?
Yes, absolutely. Both of them will show historically. I took this in fall as a third grader, and their sixth grade teacher will be able to look back and see what that was and what their progression was. Freckle was the individualized learning platform that took that score and then made learning activities for that student to practice at their kind of just right level and to stretch them a little bit. Did you want to add something, Dr. Russell? No? Okay.
No, I think you covered it, but the only thing I was going to add is that we are more and more trying to collaborate and rely upon the strategies that we know support learning or support students making progress, and sometimes those come from the student services realm. Occupational therapists, physical therapists, special education teachers, because a lot of the strategies and the practices that they employ are not only supportive of their students, but they're supportive of all students. So we were really trying to facilitate more of that. If that addresses part of your question, Mr. Saylor, relying on one another, as Dr. Smith said, yes.
I was just wondering, for grade 9 and 10 gifted ELA, how does a student get picked to be offered a gifted ELA class?
So the gifted ELA class is for students that have a GIEP, that they have been evaluated at some time in their public school career, and they meet the criteria to be identified as gifted. So it's similar to, if you think of an IEP on the other end of the spectrum, this is for those students that have been identified with a GIEP. That's the criteria to request the course. Not all of them do. Majority of them do request to be in the gifted ELA in lieu of the core ELA or even honors ELA, but that would be the requirement. Okay. Was there any questions from the public on resources? Okay. Before I move on, something is a little, It's you? Okay. You want me to move on? I got it. I will just mention next week I may have a health resource for you. I know the health curriculum you've had for a month. We have still been trying to fine tune that quote with the resource that is our front runner. So we may add that for next week, but we'll certainly share that in the memo. So the next piece here is the math action plan. I just wanted to, we presented this at the beginning of the year, and I wanted to just give you an update on where we were at. And this work has been led by Mrs. O'Sullivan along with our instructional coach, Mrs. Matei. There were 4 areas of focus within the action plan. The first one being curriculum alignment. The green check mark means kind of done. That's really the work that you're seeing is the product of that now. You're seeing our curriculum guides. We have been looking at resources. You have iReady in front of you as well. We continue to look at resources for algebra and beyond. The course sequencing and structures at the high school, Mrs. O'Sullivan has started conversations with high school staff and even the 8th grade teachers to talk about what that sequencing looks like and some creative ideas for the future. And then we will be moving into the high school math curriculum review and resources in the future years coming up. In terms of the focus area on best practices, we really did focus on professional development, and that just continues to be something that's in progress. But Mrs. O'Sullivan and Mrs. Matei have offered quite a few things this year that have been very well received. Really a focus on secondary, but they've done a lot of work at the elementary as well in terms of PD. Our instructional coaches this year, you had approved for us last year the addition of an instructional coach specifically to focus on secondary math. The feedback from teachers that have worked with Mrs. Matei has been extremely positive. I feel like we have, come over that cusp of teachers thinking that a coach is if if something is wrong and you need to have support or you have a needs improvement, to really look at a coach as that person that can collaborate with them and really help them move forward with best practices. So I know today we shared with the board some examples of things that the coaches have been doing. And then look for is looking for, that document for what is it that we look for as we move through our math classrooms. We continue to work on that. Math placement then is its own focus area because it's quite a heavy task here that Mrs. O'Sullivan can attest to how many weeks it takes her to pull the data to determine math placement. This is one area where we start accelerating as early as 5th grade for students who meet the criteria to receive 6th grade math as 5th graders. So we are interested in doing an investigation of what are our surrounding districts doing, how do they accelerate, what criteria do they use, what's the grade level at which they start. Whoops. Looking at some of the data in terms of those higher level courses and what are the demographics of the students in those courses, and are we making sure that these courses are accessible to all students. We hope to then make, even possibly present to the board, some districts have a policy for acceleration and then administrative regs. So these are really in the very initial stages, but something that are continue to be on our radar. And then in data analysis, the 4th section, the universal screener, we put a check mark here because we are using STAR at the secondary level as that universal screener. We've had data meetings that have been held. The MTSS facilitators have been doing an amazing job under the guidance of Dr. Sachs to hold data meetings with the teachers. And then we did roll out Freckle this year. We'll present on that in August with a recommendation for how we are considering moving forward with that. And then we continue to, it's just really ongoing, that data deep dive and continuing to look at the data that we have. Any questions on this?
So with regards to some of the feedback that you've been getting from the test results, have there been conversations about engaging some of the students based on their feedback of the way the tests are? I know that some of the conversations that I've personally had have been around the fact that there doesn't seem to be really a level of engagement or payoff to actually completing the activities in the tests on the student side of things. In other words, they do them, but then there's no engagement of where the progress is or what the potential could be for improvement or correction or enrichment or remediation. I mean, I realize that those things are probably happening, like you said, with the teachers, among that. But I think that there's a barrier of sorts because the kids know that they're doing them for a reason. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious as if that can be, maybe incorporated going forward in some capacity, because I think that feedback would potentially be really valuable in crafting some of the different experiences in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. We have solicited student feedback at both West and East in terms of Freckle. And that will play into our recommendations that we'll present in August, as well as staff feedback in terms of that. I think you're more referencing, though, the assessment, and some students kind of want to know, well, this is the score that I got. What does that mean for me in the classroom, or how can I challenge myself, or where do I maybe need to work on that? I would indicate that this year was really a lot of time spent with teachers focusing on what does it mean. I do think some of that is going on in the background, but being more forward with that, and student conferencing is something Mrs. O'Sullivan and I would love to see happening, and even, you know, Mrs. Folks and I, in terms of the ELI side of it with reading. What does that student conferencing look like? Many students are open to that and really do want to know where they're at. So another step for us to work on.
Yeah, I mean, and even to make it part of, you know, some of the other task force work, I think it would be helpful overall, just in terms of the transparency of the why for the community and the parents. The whole engagement piece of it, I think, is really valuable. You know, with the freckle, for example, the feedback there, it needs to be and it should be more than we just don't like to do it, or whatever, what have you. You know, I think that there's more benefit out there than just that. And even creating, you know, for example, as part of like maybe a core focus group of kids, and perhaps like the gifted classrooms or in some of the other types of settings, that would, I think, just very helpful to do a deep dive of the analysis. It can kind of play into actually examining what data like that means for them individually, obviously, but then also in terms of building curriculum.
Mm-hmm. Very good ideas. I can say that the students really did give us much more better feedback than just, I don't want to do this.
I know that. I was kidding.
Yeah, they were very intuitive, though, and were able to give us some really good feedback about features that maybe worked or didn't work for them. So, but we can absolutely expand on that. Mm-hmm. Anything else here? Anything from the public? So the ELD program review, the board may recall that you approved for us to enter into a contract with Montgomery County Intermediate Unit to do a program review of English language development that Mrs. Folks worked on very closely with the IU staff. So the board has available in board docs the full slide deck summary and the suggested resources that they provided. I do have a lot of slides in here, but I'm going to go through them pretty quickly just to give you a snapshot of what that entailed. But I did want to start with just a shout out to, you saw the World Language Mentors tonight, but this night, this was PV Paints and ELD Family Night that Mrs. Folks really organized with our ELD specialists. Hugely successful night. We had over 100 people at this night, which was held, and our art teacher, Heather LaPera, had helped to create where everybody came in and got a canvas and they did painting, and our teachers were there then to help interact with families. There were resources available, as you can see in the picture, and we actually had some donations from some organizations and companies in our own community that really helped to make the night a success. So really appreciative of that. You can just, you know, see through the activities that they were doing, they had a really nice night and just helped to build some of those partnerships. And one of the grants through the foundation actually helped to fund some of the supplies, as well as there was food provided for those in attendance. So it was just a really great night. And again, you can see we also had some resources available, and then the kids proudly displaying their artwork. But as far as the program review, just quickly, these are from the IU. They looked at our October enrollments through PIMS, and this is what we have listed for our ELD enrollment. You can see it has more than doubled since 2010. And then they also shared with us that it's not just Perkiomen Valley. This is pretty consistent across the county in terms of the L enrollment in schools across the county. And then these were the guiding questions that led the program review. Really, are all English learners' needs being met by our current programming? What are the current strengths, and what are the areas of need? And these, I won't read the steps here, but you can see many of the things that were included in that. They spent several months here, and Mrs. Folks provided them with quite a few documents that they could look at, and we set up surveys and opportunities for them to interview as well. And then these became the areas of focus, which they gave us feedback on each of these particular areas. So really the big goal, you've seen this slide before in the data presentation, are their needs being met? 84% of them are not showing the growth expectation that we would like to see. And then they did identify the current areas of strength, really focused on the dedication of our current staffing at the time. And you know, Dr. Russell asked them, is this just something nice that you say to every district that goes through a review? And they were pretty clear that no, this doesn't come through in every district's assessment, and that really the dedication of the staff to go above and beyond and try to do things really stood out and was much appreciated by our general education teachers. And parents indicated that they are very appreciative of the supports that they do get from the district. And then there are quite a few areas for improvement. Again, there's 8 areas listed here. I won't go through all of them. The larger slide deck has future considerations under each of those particular areas and resources that we should be looking at. And then there had some considerations or findings in each of those areas as well. Again, I'm not going to read through them, but there is a lot there if you want to delve into that. So what are we going to do with this now? We already did do many things because we knew that some of this was coming. So you did increase ELD staffing. We have 2 additional staff members who will be moving into those roles for a total of 5 in the district. We have done our consultation with the non-public schools. We are required because of Title III to consult with schools that receive some of the Title III funds that are non-public schools residing in our district. We have accomplished that this year. Mrs. Folks has worked with Mr. Ganesh to ensure that we are collecting the right information in synergy to be able to make ease of access for our ELD teachers as well as communication items. We did professional development this year, not only for the ELD specialists, but for the entire staff, received training in January. And then communication tools, we have investigated, and I'll be recommending to you a resource for that this evening as well. Our next steps, we did have a short debriefing with the administrative team, but we need to do more of that with the report and reflect upon that. We want to take the report and turn it into an action plan on the district template and prioritize the steps to determine what we can accomplish feasibly each year, and then if there are any resources to recommend as a result. So we'll share that action plan once it is created. So as far as that communication tool, what I am recommending this evening for your consideration is an additional tool, which is called Talking Points. It is 2-way translated. It is text messaging. You don't have to have a phone as the teacher to be able to do this. You can log in through the website, through kind of the platform, and you can send the texts and receive them back. This is really, you know, they show the research that basically talks about how parent engagement is directly correlated to a student's academic success, and being able to communicate with a family in their language is certainly paramount. It has 145 languages available within their system, and they talk about it being that there's actually a school terminology where the parent can click on a word if they don't know what it is. I send the text in English. They receive the text in whatever their language may be. They can click on a word if they're not sure what it is and get a definition. There's a glossary with common school terminology available. You can record a video. I can send a video out. I can put closed captioning on it, and it will translate the closed captioning into whatever the language is of that family. And there is actually human translation support. So if they're not sure what does this mean, or needing to send something back and forth, you can actually get a human. And this was interesting, I thought. Readability, it will actually prompt the person who's created the text. If it's not written at a 5th grade reading level, it'll prompt you. You may want to rewrite that or change the language or the word that you chose so that it's at hopefully a reading level that everybody can comprehend and understand. And it does have text to speech and speech to text. So you may be wondering, okay, we have Blackboard, we have Synergy, do we need yet another piece? Our initial proposal was just to purchase this for our ELD students here in the district and their families, but that would also come with all teachers being able to, and administrators having access to that. The cost for that was $3,510. The company came back to us and said, you can have the whole package, the entire district communication package with all those features for all of your students in district for the exact same cost for 1 year. So it kind of seemed like a no-brainer to recommend that we try the entire package. I've already spoken to Mr. Ganesh as well as Dr. Parr in terms of Blackboard to understand the features that they have available. Neither one of them can do what Talking Points can do at this point in time. So we would like to move forward with this purchase for next year, allow us to kind of pilot it for the 1 year, and then do a much more thorough, comprehensive comparison between the systems we have, and maybe there's something else out there that we haven't heard of yet. It would be ideal if one package could do all of the communication needs. We may not find that, but that would ideally be what we would like to do. So this is a recommendation that you'll see on the board agenda for this month. Questions?
Do we know what year 2 costs are?
Do we know what year 2 costs? Yes, we do. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Folks. I'm thinking off the top of my head, it was around $20,000. The Blackboard, however, right now is costing us, I believe, $13,000. So it would be an increase certainly to implement. But that was a question we asked. We didn't want to kind of be pulled in and then it be, you know, way out of our ballpark. Was I about right, Mrs. Folks? Okay.
So
I was off
talking
by
points
5.
would be 25,000.
Yes.
And then Blackboard is how much?
Blackboard is 13, if I recall correctly.
And what's the other one?
Synergy is part of our synergy, so I don't know that we would get any savings for not using the communication piece. Mr. Ganes is shaking his head now.
Could we get rid of Synergy, or do you need that?
Synergy is our student information system. Mr. Ganesh would have a heart attack.
Get rid of, so we could get rid of Blackboard.
We could eliminate Blackboard, yes.
So you're asking really not for 3,000, but for 12,000, realistically. It's a trial period for 1 year, but if it works, and you want to move forward, and the MCIU is saying we're going to have another uptick in the next 5 years with more ELD students. So you're basically, it's a $12,000.
It could be an ask of $12,000 next year, yes.
Blackboard, are we in a contract with them?
No, we are not.
So we could remove them? Yes.
It's a year-to-year renewal, Mr. Ganesh, is that correct? Yes. Yeah. And certainly the finances comes into it as we review all of them. We just felt for $3,500 to be able to meet the needs of this population this year and get to pilot it for all students really just made sense to us. Dr. Kohler?
Do you know of any other area districts that use talking points? Have you talked to other school districts about it?
Yes, we do. I believe it was Wissahickon. No, okay, I'll let Mrs. Folks. One district gave us very high feedback. Go ahead.
It's actually Upper Moreland that I spoke with. They do use talking points and spoke incredibly highly of it. And one of the features is that you can track the family engagement because it is two-way. It's not one-way communication, which is something that most other communication packages can offer. And so one of the things that they touted was the increase in engagement with multilingual families because of the use of this technology tool.
Currently, neither Blackboard nor Synergy provide a 2-level communication or the amount of languages that are available.
Do you know how long, oh, I don't know, can I answer?
Yeah.
How long has Upper Moreland had the program?
I would have to reach back out to double check, but it has been multiple years. I want to say possibly 3 years. I can look into that again, though.
And have they seen an uptick in their students' academic success?
That's a great question. I don't know if it has translated to academic success. I mean, again, that's what the company would say research shows. So I can ask that specific question.
I mean, that would be my main question is, you know, it's a trial program is one thing, but that means we want to do it. It's a $12,000 ask, and that's also fine too. But at some point, we also want to make sure if it doesn't translate into academic success, why would we do something? We shouldn't do anything unless it translates into academic success when we're talking about buying any type of software that's supposed to have academic success. Makes things easier, that's great, but you know, we need to find ways to take these students and give them success that they deserve.
I certainly agree. I know that Talking Points has some research as well regarding the connections that through their own research that they have, you know, been able to make. So we can look at some of that and certainly ask Upper Moreland. Anything else about Talking Points, Ms. White?
So did you go over, and I know we've talked about it before, how many different languages are spoken by families in our district?
Yes, we did. Mrs. Folks?
There are 17 languages that we're currently aware of. Again, this is at times a more transient population, so the exact number will vary.
Sure.
But having looked at the list of languages on Talking Points, I believe it would meet all of our needs with those languages.
For the $12,000, it's supporting those families for $12,000 with 17 languages employing
Correct.
17 different people speaking those languages.
Correct. And I know that that was the most positive feedback from Upper Moreland. Again, I can look into the academic piece, but spoken very highly of in terms of the families being appreciative for having that ability to be in the know.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So even to be able to like emotionally or support them in other ways besides academics,
Mhm.
obviously that would translate. If you can communicate, you can help in general. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Public? No? Okay. Then a real quick staffing update. You've seen these throughout the months. Just a change here with elementary projections. We have been kind of holding off on looking at those kindergarten numbers and waiting to see if we would have more registrations. They really have leveled off. So the numbers that you see in the chart actually now are the number of registrations we actually have plus 10. We've looked back historically, and from this time of year, the number of registrations has grown anywhere from 0 to a max of 10 the past several years. So we padded each of them by 10 just in case we get more registrations over the summer, and then we based our staffing based upon that. So we feel pretty confident in that staffing. That then drove out the need for only 7 kindergarten teachers, of which we had 9. So those 2 teachers, we had also been, if you recall, looking at, there were 2 groups in 4th grade at Evergreen and at Schwenksville that principals had expressed a need based upon the needs of the students, as well as the class size was right either at or slightly above our guidelines. So we have reallocated those 2 kindergarten positions to those 2 4th grade positions. And the middle school projections have really stayed the same here. And then overall, this is just a summary of those new positions that you had approved. It was still a +2 in the budget. Any questions or thoughts on staffing? Public? Okay. And I will turn it over to Dr. Russell.
Thank you. So this evening I wanted to inform the board of some conversations that have been happening in some different settings, and we have some of the individuals who have been advocating really hard for facility dogs, and in particular we are focused on Middle School West. So we have Mrs. Zielinski here, who is a counselor at Middle School West, and she has really led some of the conversations around this. And we have Ava Bellino, who is a student at the high school, who has worked as a partner alongside Mrs. Zielinski. And then we have Mrs. Moylan, who's also here participating in the conversations. I see Mr. Creedon is here too, principal of Middle School West. And there's a real dedication to securing a facility dog, and by securing I mean purchasing and owning a facility dog, because of the benefits that we've learned these dogs can provide to students right now who are struggling, again, in different ways, and I said that a little bit earlier this evening. We do have dogs come into our 4 elementary schools and Middle School East. And students have opportunities, in some cases, to read to the dogs if maybe they're a struggling reader. The dog doesn't prompt them as much, and maybe it's a more comfortable setting as they're moving through their reading. It's also, for some students, just a comfortable situation to be with a dog. In one of our elementary schools, our principal actually has her own certified therapy dog and brings that dog in occasionally, and students have responded really in a positive manner. At West, we're looking for the dog not really to be a being that our students would read to, but instead a dog that would support students who might have anxiety or might be suffering with panic attacks or might be emotionally really upset or stressed. So some of these emotions and the mental health and well-being of our students has been supported, effectively supported by these dogs. Now, you know, I've said this phrase a couple of times. We own equipment, and we own trucks, and we own lawnmowers. We don't own living things. So to take this step and purchase a dog is a big one for the district. But other districts have done it. And they have found ways to raise the money to support the costs that come with owning a dog, very similar to having a dog at home. There are food costs and vet costs and bed costs and whatever other care needs are necessary for the dog. When a district purchases a facility dog, and Mrs. Zielinski has done a lot of research on this, and she's presented to the foundation to try and be supported with funding. She's also presented to the Wellness Committee, which again is a step that we like proposals like this to move through or to take. What happens when a district purchases a facility dog is that you need to have somebody who is the assigned caretaker, who is committed to being that dog's true caretaker, goes home with that person, comes back to school with that person. And then there are handlers There's a different training or professional development for them. They are literally individuals that can have the dog in their presence and be leading the dog throughout the day. And maybe there are 3 of those in a building. One caretaker with some backup, of course. But if I end up being the caretaker for the dog that's purchased, that dog comes home with me every night and comes back to school with me the next day. So some things to think about in addition to the cost, there is the responsibility. Mrs. Zielinski has gone to the lengths of surveying Middle School West students and parents just to get a sense of, what do you think of this idea? It's a relatively new idea. There are not a lot of districts that have taken this step, but there are some. And she has gone and visited those districts and learned from them and seen these facility dogs in action. Mrs. Zielinski also followed up with any parents that had questions about having a dog in the building on a regular basis. For some people, it raised some questions. Maybe they have a fear of dogs. Maybe they have allergies to dogs. And some of these things were presented, and she has worked through each of these families individually. Now, what has really been suggested, these are some of the benefits that I've called out already, really. You can read these in more detail. The proposal is to purchase the dog. However, West hasn't really experienced therapy dogs or facility dogs. So the suggestion right now is to move into the upcoming school year and expose students in the building to these dogs. And there are agencies around us that offer these dogs. And again, our students have responded very well in a very positive manner to having these dogs in the building. In addition to exposing Middle School West students to the dog or dogs, gather data. And how can we justify this resource as one that supports mental health and wellness, social and emotional well-being? And they have also taken some steps to already identify caretakers and dog handlers as they prepare on a longer term what might be for West and the community at West. However, at this point, the conversations have been happening in some other circles. You've received some information in a memo. We wanted to bring the conversation to the public so that you are aware of some of the thinking and some of what's involved, as well as the public. And then if you have questions, that you have an opportunity to ask. There is not a recommendation coming to you this month. However, we are really planting some seeds and really interested in entertaining the questions you may have about taking such a step. The step will start with exposing students and the West Building to these dogs, and then potentially a purchase is what they'd like to do. So, are there any questions or comments from anyone on the board? Yes.
So I heard the presentation at both the Wellness Committee meeting and also the Foundation meeting, and at that time, we were focusing on West, but then there were administrators from East there saying, well, if they're doing it, we want to do it. And I could see the high school and other schools wanting to do it. So has that conversation brought into beyond just West?
So East, yes, immediately stepped up and expressed interest, having heard the presentation that was made during the Wellness Committee. I don't know that I'm hearing that from the high school yet. I don't know, Dr. Smith, if you are. I think the high school needs to have lots more conversations before they initiate a step, or at least they haven't come to us with that step yet. East and West are very interested. East has experienced the dogs, and they are very much in favor of the dogs. And if West gets a dog, then East really would like to also have a dog. And oftentimes that's how we do things at the middle level, so that the experiences are similar. High school, I can't answer more specifically than that, but that could be a trend that we see, yes.
Do you have any estimates on costs yet?
I think we think we've learned that the cost to buy the dog is about $7,500, and then it would be several thousand a year, roughly, for food, potentially vet bills, if there's pet insurance to reduce serious medical costs. That's also a cost. I don't have an accurate quote for that, but these are some of the things that they've considered, and I'm looking to Mrs. Zielinski. Costs for, on average for a year, can you help me a little bit?
Anywhere, all the districts that Ava and I spoke to was anywhere between 2 and 5, and it was all for fundraising. It was the districts that we spoke to said it was the most successful, easiest fundraising they've ever conducted. I believe that. And you said someone's going to take it home at night? Or it's- Okay.
So I think if Mrs. Moylan, just hypothetically, if she is the caretaker of the dog, just hypothetically, then yes, that dog goes home, and that dog's a part of her family. When she is not at school, when she comes back to school, that dog comes back to school with her, and so she is that main caretaker person. Yes.
I just have a couple questions.
Dr. Campley, then Mrs. Mears.
I definitely could foresee that if we did a therapy dog, that at the middle school level, if the high school's not really on board yet, once they have students coming up who have had successful interactions, who have anxiety and things, and those kids are they're going to be seeking out if that was something that worked for them. I could see the high school doing it. So I could potentially see 3 dogs. My question then would be, in addition to the dog costs, will there be, just like when we have coaching and different, things where there's additional income for staff, would there be a fee that the person who's a caretaker or even the handlers for having that additional responsibility above and beyond what their job requirements are, would there be a fee associated with that, and has that been considered? Because I think that would be an important component.
Interesting question. And we haven't really talked about like a co-curricular stipend or units assigned to such a role. So I think we would have to have some more conversation about that. And I don't know if that exists in the other school districts or not.
The training is outside of school hours, and the woman that we would contract with that these other local districts have does biannual refresher training, and these other districts add handlers each year as they're they work the program.
Mrs. Maris, did you have a question?
I do. Thank you. I'm wondering what the insurance impact would be to the district.
We've been in contact with our insurance broker all the way through these various conversations. There is no additional cost. It's covered. It would be covered under current liability insurances, and there is no additional cost, presuming there are certain things and guidelines in place that we were talking about.
And we feel comfortable with, I know the dogs don't typically bite, but just whatever, if the issue were to arise or a child had an allergic reaction that they didn't know they had an allergy to the dog, and we're covered and we feel comfortable with where we are.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions about the facility dogs?
Questions from the public?
Hi, good evening, Judy Lofton. I am in full support of the facility dogs, but I do have a question how the ownership would work in the event that the caretaker, for example, has a life change, winds up moving away. It sounds like the dog really becomes a part of the family, becomes a family dog for the caretaker, and I'm just curious, how a $7,500 dog is not an inexpensive dog. So how would those types of situations be managed, both managing it for the dog, managing it for the family, managing it for the school, identifying a new caretaker, or rehoming the dog? I'm worried about how those dynamics could potentially play out.
Great question, and I'm looking at Mrs. Zielinski. I don't know if you're comfortable answering. I know that you've had backup plans that you've talked about in the event something would happen to a caretaker, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit more if you're comfortable doing that.
Part of the process is there's an information session for any staff member who's interested in potentially being a caretaker or a handler. And one of the most important criteria is, as much as they can know, how long they plan to be with the school. And I know sometimes, life happens and, unplanned situations occur and, you know, they may no longer be with the district, but we have a secondary caretaker that's also there. And the primary caretaker, if they're going to leave the district, they can buy the dog back, or it goes to the secondary caretaker, which then is the dog is rehomed. And the secondary caretaker is there to take the dog if the primary caretaker goes on FMLA or goes on vacation in the summer and needs someone to take care of the dog, or to bring the dog to events at night that the dog's coming to.
So I'm envisioning a school being very attached, and the caretaker gets first, the kind of right of first refusal, not the school. Is that how it works? Meaning the caretaker can say, I'm leaving the school and I want to take the dog, I'm going to pay you for it. So they get that first option versus the school saying, we're going to keep the dog, we have a secondary handler, and they're going to now move up to the primary.
Because the dog's owned by the school, we get that first option to decide if we're going to, you know, rehome the dog with the secondary caretaker, or, yeah, that's.
It would depend on the age of the dog. Depend on the age of the dog.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
at some point they get retired.
Yeah, correct. Any other questions from the public? Okay.
Okay, so at this point, we'll continue to follow up. West will implement the plan to experience dogs in the fall, gather the data, and we will continue to report back as this recommendation is considered. Thank you.
So then the Educational Equity Action Plan is just a slight update. This slide just shows some progression of this work that has been done, which most recently culminated with the creation of an equity task force. And then you had the presentation last month of the action plan that came out of the task force. However, back in October, prior to the creation of the task force, administration had created an action plan on the district template. And so what we have done and shared with the board is integrated the work of the task force into that draft action plan that was presented back in October. So that's included for the board. There's 8 focus areas, and each focus area then covers each of the areas here. What's the action step, the dates, how will we know that it's completed, and so forth. So there's just an example here shown for you on the welcoming and inclusive environment, and an idea of what some of those action steps are. So certainly it is pretty extensive, and you can certainly take a peek at that in board docs. Any questions or comments on that? Anything from the public? Okay. And then I think you're up last, right?
Okay, yes, thank you. Last thing is we are obligated to maintain a health and safety plan connected to ESSER funding, and again, connected to the pandemic, which we now have moved out of. So the plan has been revised to reflect where we are in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I have shared a draft with the board. If there are questions about any of the aspects or what has been revised, I would welcome your questions. Otherwise, this is something that will be requested for you to approve this month.
Thank you.
Public. Any questions from the public on the health and safety plan? Great, thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. Mears, you did have a question?
Sorry. So I have questions, and maybe I missed it, on the Unit 3 Sexual and Personal Health 12th grade that I had sent to you, Dr. Smith, and I just wanted to have more conversation about that. So my question was, and I apologize. Let's see, slide 16. For the slides, really what I wanted to know is, are we using Planned Parenthood as a resource? And if so, so that's my first question. And I still didn't get an answer to that.
So Planned Parenthood is not, you will not find it in the curriculum guide, nor the resource that we are looking at is there a reference to Planned Parenthood specifically as an organization. We have linked some of the CDC websites. If you follow the CDC website, it may reference Planned Parenthood.
It is not our intention that we would be advocating for Planned Parenthood. Our goal is really to help our students understand and discern for themselves what is a reliable resource that they want to, you know, that they are willing to follow maybe some of the guidance or that they believe is reliable. And that will may be based upon their beliefs, that may be based upon their values or a trusted adult who is kind of guiding them in that. Our goal through the curriculum is to help them understand and assess what might be reliable for them and where might be organization. So Planned Parenthood, certainly it could come up. I think it's a term that kids have heard. It's not the intention of the curriculum to call that out.
Right, because the purpose of my questions that I had sent you earlier was really just to make sure that there's balance, right? I'm asking for balance, that if we're going to provide this aspect and emergency contraception and all of that, that we also provide balance, that there are other things that one can do. You don't, that you wouldn't need emergency contraception. So that's what I was looking for in the sexual health and personal health units that were the curriculum that's being put forward.
And that is the intention. Mrs. O'Sullivan has worked with the teachers of health here at the high school, is to cover the whole spectrum and to help students understand how might they make a decision and who are the resources that they might use to make that decision. My choices might be very different than yours are based upon my values and my beliefs and, you know, my upbringing and so forth, but providing them, here's the spectrum of what they are, here's how you might evaluate each of those, and here's some resources that who might you go to help you make that decision.
Okay. And then parent letters are going to go out, right?
Yes,
It sounds
so our
like.
intention is to have letters very similar to the English language arts. I apologize that we did not have them ready to attach to the curriculum guide. We can certainly share them and put them as an addendum, but they would go out at the beginning of the course to say, these are the units that we will be covering. Here's some resources if you want to look into that, you know, and if you have any questions or concerns, please let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Dr. Campley?
Okay, thank you. So 4.02, 03, and 04 were all covered on the Education Committee of a Whole slides. 4.05, 06, and 07. The first 105 is approval of curriculum guides. 4.06 is approval of virtual high school agreement. And 4.07 is the approval of the 2023 and 2024 student handbooks. If there aren't any questions on any of those, they can all be moved to consent.
I have an objection for 4.07, to leave that off consent.
4.07 will be left off consent. 4.05 and 4.06 will move to consent.
So, did you want to have any discussion tonight on 4.07?
No, I think I sent some questions to the administration about some things in the yearbook in the high school handbooks that don't necessarily make sense. They're not congruently written. They need to, you know, update some pages on, for instance, in the high school handbook, page 18 and page 25 differ with each other. So there's just some, you know, editing that needs to be done. So it's a proper functional handbook.
So if I could add to that, there was some, there were questions about cell phone and smartwatch policies, or what is being presented in the handbook and the language in policy, and the differences between high school, middle school, and elementary. Middle school and elementary are really trying to get stricter with students and their cell phone use and smartwatch use, while they recognize that at times these devices are necessary, whether it's to translate or whether it's for medical purposes. However, there are also abuses that are happening, and they would like to get stricter with the cell phone policy use for middle school and elementary students. High school, we've learned this year that some high school classrooms have a parking lot, and some teachers ask their students to put their phone in the parking lot. Other students don't take, other teachers don't take that step. So the high school is in a different space, and they're also really trying to teach their students etiquette when it comes to cell phone usage. So we need to clean up, as Mr. Saylor said. There were some middle school, there was middle school language, put in the high school book, some high school language in the middle school. I appreciate you catching that, and we need to straighten that out. And I'd like to share updates with the board this week in the memo, and then invite your questions if you have them. Our principals would also like to to have a touch point on this, but it's really that cell phone use, smartwatch use. We're seeing a lot of smartwatches in the elementary school now, and that's raising some questions. So we want to get the language right.
Also, girls wrestling.
And we did add girls wrestling, thank you. We did add girls wrestling in the high school as an opportunity for students in addition to boys wrestling. So we did do that too, thank you.
Okay. 4.08 is a request of action for this evening for the approval of students eligible to graduate, which is a very exciting motion to make. So I'd like to make the motion to approve the students eligible to graduate and wish them all much congratulations. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Schaefer on there? You checked your, okay, well then we're good. Yeah, that's right. Oh, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. That was a great one. I really enjoyed doing that one. 4.09 is also a request for action for the approval of an overnight trip. So the motion to, I make a motion to approve students eligible, no, I'm on the wrong one. That's the graduation one. Moving up. A motion to approve an overnight trip as presented. It is for the Disney Orlando, Florida trip for next year's seniors.
Is there a second? We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
4.10 and 4.11. 4.10 is approval of field trip costs K through 8, and 11 is approval of a foreign exchange student. If there's no questions, both of them can be moved to consent. And 4.12 is the enrollment report. Anything you wanted to add beyond what was in the meeting or the?
No, thank you, Dr. Campley.
Okay, that ends my section.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kempley. Mr. Keenan?
We have a 5.01 is finance committee as a whole with Mr. Weaver.
Good evening, everybody. We have a very long list on the agenda, but we have 30 slides to work our way through. It'll go pretty quick, I hope. Okay, so for the conversation tonight, we'll get started here, perhaps. There we go. Okay, so we'll have capital projects update. I'll invite Mr. Fabrizio up. We have 4 very specific things, and then we have a listing to provide for an update as far as what we're attempting to do this summer. For the purposes of coming back when we come back in August, that we can judge how we made out during the year. We'll have our big equal sign final general fund budget presentation tonight, and then all the accoutrements that go along with that, with the setting of the homestead farmstead and the final approval rate for the millage impact. 3-year security services agreement, we have update on that and a recommendation, and same with the municipal lease for custodial equipment. So hitting a few topics that we are well aware of, we are recommending Franklin flooring for the music and orchestra rooms. We've been working on this now for several months at a cost not to exceed $27,509. That is Finance Committee of the Whole 5.02. And that will be paid for through committed to capital project monies. And the timeline will be done this summer. Staging systems, risers, and music library storage, also within the high school music and orchestra rooms. It'll be to provide for new risers and music library storage units within those rooms at a cost not to exceed $56,868. Again, CoStar's contract to be paid for through committed through capital projects, and the estimated timeline will be 2023, the summer of 2023. Any questions on those 2 particular items? Any questions from the community? Okay, thank you. Moving forward, 5.04, we are recommending Franklin Flooring once again, who is a really good partner of ours, through CoStars to provide flooring and wall carpet replacement and LED lighting strips in the middle school east auditorium as well, at a cost not to exceed $60,309, again to be paid for through committed to capital projects, and the work will be done this summer. Any particular questions on that one? Anything from the community? Okay, thank you. Another item, 5.05, we are recommending Franklin Flooring once again to renovate the carpet and flooring in the library at Evergreen Elementary School at a cost not to exceed $25,018 through CoStars, committed through capital projects. Timeline to be completed this summer as well. Any questions on that one? Any questions from the community? Okay. Mr. Fabrizio, if you'd like to come up. We let Mr. Fabrizio do the heavy lifting. So there is a lot on this list. What we've tried to do is list everything that we're currently working on in various stages. And then we are trying to show you what we think will be completed this summer in terms of either ESCO 5.0, completion of parts of ESCO 4.0 that we continue to work on, or other items that we brought forward in various stages. Just to hit it, skip back, the 5.0, all those items that are listed there, we do anticipate all 4 of those items to be completed this summer. And the board is well aware of that. High school auditorium revamp, we are happy to report that the flooring is done, the electrical work is done, the seats are in, and we are working out a timeline with CM Eichenlob to bring those seats and to install those seats. So that work is expected to be completed by the end of July, but certainly before we come back for school in the fall. Some other items, we talked about the Evergreen Library flooring, high school orchestra and chorus rooms, high school gym floor refurb, one item on that one. We did debate whether or not we were going to go for a total stripping of all the wax and repainting of all of the lines. We've decided not to do that at this point in time. So it is essentially a standard operating procedure for us. We're just going to strip some layers of wax, leave the majority of it there, then re-wax it and give it a smooth coat. That will get us another couple of years with that flooring. Stadium lighting automation, that project was approved. We continue to work on that. Joe, I don't know if you have an update on the automated out in the stadium that you want to share.
Sure, they wanted to do it before graduation. I said they're nuts. So we're waiting until after graduation to tackle that project. Again, we'll be able to tie it into our BAS system and control the lighting through our laptop and schedule it accordingly.
Similar fashion, the high school, the pool pump room flooring, that was previously approved. Mr. Fabrizio has worked his way through that schedule again. That will be completed relatively shortly. High school storage containers, through part of the process that we've been working with, Mr. Fabrizio has come up with an idea of actually taking a container and putting it in on one of the concrete pads out back here at the high school to give us additional storage for the grounds. It's actually a really good idea, something we hadn't thought of. The storage container is relatively cheap, and the pad is already there. So we just put it there, we build a little ramp to put stuff in there, and there we get additional storage that we were lacking at this point in time, complete with the top part too. Kudos to Mr. Fabrizio for continuing that one. That one's relatively new to the board, but that is a really good way of thinking outside the box to get that done. Food service equipment is set up. That work was previously approved. We know that that will be completed at least by August. Mr. Fabrizio and his crew and Mrs. Yaksich have been working hard on that. And one final point on middle school east auditorium carpeting. We talked about that. And the natural gas line will almost be completed hopefully by early next week. And at that point in time, what they will do is they'll go back up to the building, they'll work their way through the parking lot. They couldn't do the parking lot because school's in session. Once school is over next week, early next week, they'll get in there, they'll cross the parking lot up at West, they'll attach it to the building, and that portion of that 4.0 will be completed at that point in time. The next item down, middle school west boiler, then it will be turned over to CM3 as part of the ESCO 4 to take out the oil burner boiler and put in the natural gas boiler and work on completing that. That work shall be done. We have a good timeline on that by mid-October. Again, those are offline now. We can work on those when we can. Even with the students in the building, they can get in there and finish those projects up. It's at the one side of the building. So that's kind of where that is. High school tennis court fix and pickleball conversion. There is an agenda item on there that we finished today that I did not include in the presentation, but you will see for the total sum cost of $7,860, I believe it is. We can fix all cracks on all 12 of the courts and get the official pickleball lines put in on the lower court 4 courts. So that brings that to a head. We'll ask for the recommendation and the acceptance of that at that point in time. As far, oh, yes, Mrs. Maris.
Do we have a breakout of what it costs to fix the cracks and what it costs to put the pickleball lines on? Just because I know there's been continuing conversation off and on about resurfacing everything. So I'm just wondering what the cost to put the pickleball lines on is.
It's 4,000.
Yeah, it's $4,000 for the pickleball lines for those 4 courts, and it's a little less than $4,000 for the repairing of the cracks. The repairing of the cracks will get us 3 to 5 years. If the board does recall, the initial push for this, almost a year and a half ago, I guess, we had looked at a figure to actually replace those tennis courts, redo them completely because they haven't been redone since they've been put in 2005, I think, 2004, 2005, was about $120,000. So we avoid that for the time being. That gets us 3 to 5 years, knock on wood. And Mr. Fabrizio will continue to look at that. But we can do the cheaper repairs now and continue to get use out of those courts. The biggest part of that, over 50% of that cost, is the pickleball lines. To keep in mind, fall 2023 expected completions, high school chiller replacement, high school tennis court fix. There you go, we added that. And again, that's temperature sensitive as well. So we have to do that at some point in time. Mid-fall is about when we kind of run out of time to do that. So we got to work with the high school staff and the students and everything and make sure that we have those courts available and ready to be used without external pressure on them to get done. But again, with approval next week, we think we can get a timeline in there that's favorable for that. Middle School West dugouts, we continue to work on that. We have a final plan. It's out to KPN at this point in time. We do anticipate fall of 2023, those Middle School West dugouts will be completed at that point in time. Again, we've been working on that one for quite some time. Outdoor LED replacement, they are here. We just need time to install them. Mr. Fabrizio and the staff will install them as well. If you recall, there was a big bunch of LED light bulbs that we had done as part of the ESCO 4.0 project. This continues in that process. Schwenksville chiller replacement, fall of 2023. Again, when the summer ends, the chiller comes offline. CM3 can get in there and complete that. That is part of ESCO 5.0. And then high school room 149 FCS revamp. We continue to work on that as well. Those are the heavy hitters that we have to share with the school board tonight as far as what we're tracking for this summer and into the fall of 2023. Any questions? Ms. White.
That FCS room, can you talk a little bit more about what you're continuing to work on? Like what that means exactly?
Joe, so.
Sure. So we partnered with GKO, and they developed a plan with the input with Dr. Boyd and Joe Naducci. Right now, the plans are in review. So that room is going to become a flexible space. I think we talked about this before. Kind of like a learning demonstration area in the front, a calm down area, an ADA restroom, going down to just one kitchen area with a coffee space so the kids can make coffee and continue to sell that. So we're in the final review stages now in the planning phase.
So is that an architectural review that you're in the process of, or?
No, the architects already came out, took all the measurements, and provided an initial plan.
Right.
So that plan is in review at this time.
Oh, that's what's in review.
Mhm.
And so, if I remember correctly, there was you're keeping the washer dryer.
Yep, everything
area,
stays there.
all of that staying. Okay. And so then, with all of that review that's happening and the input, is there a timeline in place?
Probably mid to late fall. We can get better pricing at that point because contractors are looking for work headed into the winter season.
So there won't be anything that'll be offline for the beginning of the school year.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to coordinate that with Dr. Boyd and the kids that are in there.
Okay. I guess in the anticipation, obviously the summer is such a advantageous time to actually get the work done. It seems like a shame that we can't have it after this amount of conversation, that we can't have it up and running.
To get it out to bid right now, advertising, we're probably 3-4 months, even to get contractors in. There's equipment procurement that has to take place, which now it's 30-40 weeks out for equipment. So
Okay. And then I know that we had talked about the fact that because that room is isolated, from the building in some aspects, the work can happen during the school year.
correct.
Well, but it doesn't need to happen after hours?
No, it can happen during the day.
Okay. So, okay. I just am thinking in terms of like a rollout plan at this point, now that all of these pieces are in place, like, let's.
Yep. Once we have the sign off on the design, it'll go out to bid, and then we'll have a number for you, and then develop a timeline at that point.
And the sign off from the design is coming from who, you or?
Dr. Boyd and myself.
Oh, okay. So are you close to feeling like it's good? Okay. We're anxious for you. We want to make sure. Okay, cool.
And I can share that plan during the next meeting or send it out this week if you want to say it. Yep.
I have a question about that too. Dr. Boyd, I'm wondering, is there a plan, because I thought this was going to go into play starting in the fall, so it sounds like, can you just explain what your plan is for this year coming up for the kids that would have utilized that?
So until the space goes under renovation, we have access to that space. We will have to partner with Mr. Fabrizio to find out when when reconstruction or construction of that space is due to occur, and then we'll have to create an alternative plan for a space for the students to work out of. Right now it's the coffee cart. Again, we want to further develop the functional and vocational skill set for our students, so we'll have to talk about that, and I guess it depends when it would go out to bid. And again, we're kind of having this conversation with the board. We have not had that next step in our conversation, what that would look like. So we will need to map out a plan for our students. But if it's something that's not going to happen until the fall, I would guess that we have access to those spaces until the actual renovation would begin.
How long will the room be down for?
I'm thinking 3 to 4 months.
So what are they doing in that room currently? Is it just the coffee cart? They're doing the laundry piece of thing.
Yes,
they're doing all of those things that they were doing.
They're using that space for vocational skills, for
Right.
occupational therapy, so anything that we can integrate for our students. So that space is utilized for a large portion of the school day.
Right. But the groups are not very large.
They
There's
are
only
not.
like 2 or 3 at a time, or depending.
I would say it could be up to maybe 8 to 10 students
Oh,
in that
oh, really?
space.
Oh, really?
It sort
Okay.
of depends. If it's the coffee cart, the groups tend to be larger because they all have different roles. If it's an OT session, it could be a smaller group of 2 or 3 students potentially in that space. It's used for a variety of things across the school day.
Okay.
Okay. The other portion of this, we continue to look at other items for spring of 2024. We continue to work on that. Stadium paving, the concession stand, they're in various stages. We can't do the stadium paving there until we figure out what we're doing with the stadium, because we have additional sewage that we need to pump out with a larger pipe. Joe, I don't know if I explained that right, or if you can.
So we have what's called an ejector pit that feeds off of the team rooms at the very end of the field. So that's a forced main. It's a 2-inch pipe that runs along the back of the current ground/concession area, and then makes a hard left into the parking lot where the grounds room is. We can't gravity flow the sewage through a 2-inch pipe because it can't handle 2 bathrooms and 2 sinks. So we have to dig up the 2-inch pipe and change it to 4-inch pipe, and then gravity flow it to the manhole.
So I guess my question for that is, can't you just run a second tandem line to the manhole?
We would still have to dig the ground up.
Oh, okay. But I just thought maybe it would be less intrusive than having to replace the pipe. Okay.
Just to ask, you said a hard left, hard right, hard.
We'll call it a sweep.
Yeah, it's like a couple 45s. I mean, you don't have a 90-degree in there.
No, it'll be a long sweep.
Some additional items that we're tracking.
Question.
Oh, good.
That sounds like it's gonna. You already know. You want to give the answer to that question?
What's that?
That's going to change the cost tremendously. It's a big dig, a big pipe replacement, right? It's not the easiest fix in the world.
I mean, you're just digging a trench and sloping a pipe. It's not too bad. It's about 140 feet. So, I mean, there's already a line there, so there's already a pathway. We don't have to worry about rock, hopefully. We're just changing the size of the pipe. So, that's the least of our worries. We should be good.
Okay, any other questions on that before we go on? Okay, so we're looking at the middle school east fire panel replacement. We do know that. That's original to the building. Evergreen cafeteria floor replacement. We just couldn't get it done this summer. We do know that that floor bubbles up. Mr. Fabrizio and his staff, they have an interesting way of handling those bubbles when it does bubble up. But we couldn't do it in Evergreen this summer because the HVAC units are going to be down. So we couldn't maintain proper humidity and coolness within when we pour that floor. Unfortunately, that'll have to be pushed off until summer of 2024. Other projects that we have information on, that we're holding on at this point in time: middle school west track resurfacing, that's out there. Operations building relocation, high school stadium stair replacement. We have a fix in place. It's temporary, and it's okay by the township, but if you recall, we did move forward with that. We thought we had a vendor to move forward with that, and then the prices rose and all that kind of stuff, and then we lost that vendor. So we kind of pulled that for now, and it's safe at this point in time. And then the high school counseling suite, there is a motion. Again, we got a motion for the board agenda for tonight for a feasibility study associated with the counseling suites. Yes.
I'd like to see added to this any safety upgrades that need to be done for the high school entry. I think we need to make sure that that's on our radar and is being talked about.
Okay. There are lots of other projects that Joe is tracking that we don't have listed. That would be definitely one of them. Absolutely.
I don't know when to ask this, but it might be okay, or might have been in education, but it could be a capital, little capital projects, relatively little, if it's attached maybe to buildings. And forgive me if I don't know the plan. Where do we have defibrillators? Every building?
Yes, we have them in every building, and here at the high school, I believe we have 3.
And they're, yeah, I'd never noticed the maps. I'm sure there are maps, like at the entrances or something, that show you where.
I don't know that there's actually maps that identify the locations, but let me find out how individuals coming into the building do know where they are. I don't know if Mr. Miller, if you know that. I would ask our nurses. They oversee those.
That's the answer. I just didn't know about the defibrillators, and I looked, and I didn't have any information on it. Thanks.
To Mr. Keenan's point about that, I actually, a couple of weeks ago that you've mentioned it, it was brought to my attention. I guess that there's just the one in each building. So I guess I'm curious as to whether or not there's a best practice for where they need to be located, because some of the buildings, if something happens in a classroom very far away from the gym, for example, or I think this, in the instance of one of the schools, it's in the custodial area. I'm not actually specifically sure, but I just think, I know that it's been needed, and sometimes there's, time is of the essence. So I just wonder if there's a best practice, like have one on every floor, or have one, I don't know the answer.
I'll do a little research on that, and then I'll also inform the board of where they are actually located in each building, and I'll report that out in the memo this week. Yeah.
Well, and more important maybe than us knowing where they are is just that the people that need to grab them know where they are.
Talked about this in the wellness committee. Maybe Dr. Boyd wants to share, because I may not remember everything, but I believe there's a team in every building that knows where they are, and there's a process in place that if you need it, this person's going to get it. So it's not just that you have to figure out where it is and get to it.
Right. So the feedback that I had was that it was in the moment, I think there was some confusion as to, and this person needs to go get it, but if that person's not there to go get it, then if there's more than one, then there's more options.
Yeah, there is a team. I didn't mention that, and that's an important point. We do have teams in each building. The comment you made, Ms. White, that did resonate is, I don't know whether our public knows, though, when basketball comes in and takes over the gyms, are they aware? Yeah. So we'll find that out, but on a daily basis, the nurse really participates and leads that A-core team who have all agreed in this case, and we're trying to strengthen these teams across the district so we have them to be trained. But I'll follow up with some more details.
So like to
I'm thinking too, not just knowing where it is, but so much of the building is sealed off. So when you go for basketball and it's in the cafeteria, is where it's located. We may know where it's located, but can we actually get to it because the gates are down, kind of thing. So it needs to be accessible too.
Well, it's supposed to be different. So when there's a game happening, it's supposed to be on premises, meaning it's supposed to be in the room. The trainer's supposed to have it on them. So it's, yeah, it's not supposed to be somewhere else. But to Ms. White's point, you have a team, that's great, but if you don't drill it, when that code blue goes at, you know, you just gotta run those drills to make sure when there is a code, everyone knows where they need to go, right? But when there's a basketball game or a football game, even swimming, they're supposed to have that on premises. It's not supposed to be, I have to go X to go grab it. They're supposed to be there. Defibrillators they're expensive. I run a youth league. We have 2. If a youth league can have 2, a school should have way more than 2. It might be good to have. To your point, a couple points in each part of the building. Like in this building, I know we have 2 in this building, but it's hard to get from point A to point D sometimes. It could take a long time, and time is of the essence when that situation happens.
Yeah, we will look into that and share more detail, greater detail with the board.
Okay, good conversation, and we'll report back like Dr. Russell mentioned. Okay, any other questions on this? Mrs. Evans-Brockett made a point to make sure that we get this on there, and we'll do that, just to share that. Any questions from the community? Okay. Quick general fund update. So tonight it brings it to kind of a conclusion where we're at. Here is the projection, the final projection for this process. You can see that it's pretty steady, 7.7% of fund balance at this point in time, and we've recognized some additional earnings as far as the earned income taxes and interest earnings as well. So that really showed through. That was a little under 7 the last time we looked at this in May, I believe. It's now closer to that 7.7%. Again, as the year goes on and the months go on and we get more actual data, we feel a little bit more confident when we do these projections, and that's a result of that. So we only had a couple of changes from the May presentation, which was the preliminary fund budget approval, which we added for interest earnings, another $125,000. And again, we've had good debate from a business office perspective on where we feel comfortable with that. And we had 2 adjustments, as was mentioned. The first one was mentioned as part of the Education Committee of the whole, the additional $80,000 for the field trips for grades K through 8. And then we also have another board agenda item, which is the adding for the net municipal lease for the operations. We do have some equipment dollars in there already that Mr. Fabrizio was willing to part with in order to cover a little under half of what the actual total municipal lease adder was. So it's only a net $17,500 adder for that. So we have a higher $125,000 on the revenue side and a higher expenditures of $97,500. That brings us to our totals of $121,785,833 for our revenues for tonight. And then the expenditures, $125,864,282, a difference of $5.3 million revenues to expenditures. We know that we used fund balance reserves to offset that. Here's a listing for tonight with all of our changes, some quick hitters in case someone asks you some additional questions or you want to double check on where these things were. The red are items, the last two items we added tonight as part of that conversation. Here is where we were in May. Again, with the recommended $1 million that we did approve, we were at a 2.67. With those final adjustments, we're at a 2.63% total adjustment. That means the millage rate is 36.38 mils, slightly down from the 36.40 as presented in May. The impact on the taxpayer, if you look at the average taxpayer assessment of $180,000, that means it's a $168.10 increase over the 22-23 real estate tax bill. Any questions on the proposed budget, the final budget? 2.63%, 36.38 mils. Any questions from the community? Okay, thank you. All right, another item, Finance Committee of the Whole 5.08 is setting the homestead farmstead rebate approval. Unfortunately, it's slightly lower than what it was last year. Remember, these are the monies associated with the gaming process. The legislature actually dictates what those dollars are. They confirm those dollars and they tell us, hey, Perkiomen Valley School District, your distribution for this year is $2,473,116. Last year was $2,507,301. So it's slightly lower. That results in a slight change from what we provided last year. Instead of $286.35 from assessed value reduction, it's actually going to be $284.79 this year. And that's what the resolution that you have for board consideration tonight sets in concrete moving forward. It is a step as part of the process once the final budget gets approved. Here is the total allotment and how we come up to that calculation and what that looks like, in case you have any questions about that. So it's actually a decrease of $1.56 in assessed value. And that gets deducted from your real estate tax bill in the upper right-hand corner, your homestead farmstead, as has been approved by the county. They tell us what those homestead farmsteads are, the total amounts. And then we simply deduct that into what the allocation is, and that's how we come up with that valuation. Any questions from the school board on that? Mrs. Mears.
I just want to clarify. So we don't have to, as a homeowner, you're taking that off our total bill that's owed. We don't have to go out independently and say, we're owed this money, please give it to us.
That's
Is that
correct. That's
Okay,
correct.
because I was hearing something different from.
That is, and that's
Okay.
the way the legislature set it up, so that the school districts were taken out of handling of the money. So that way there's no debate about, hey, you got this, what did you do with it? It just comes right in and it goes right out per that assessed valuation. Any questions from the community on that? Okay, thank you. Security services recommendation. So we have the SPOs that we have in place, and we have the current SSOs that we have in place as well. We have that overall coverage figure that we went out with an RFP on. We hit up 7 vendors. We had a lot of interest. Unfortunately, we only had 2 responses to that RFP. And we immediately, with the 2 responses, the deadline came and went. We actively went out and researched with the vendors that chose not to move forward with a response. And their biggest concern was crossing guards. We have crossing guards as part of our thing. Not every school district has that. We have 5 crossing guards that we have as part of their package. They were unwilling to do that. They didn't think that that was worthy of their services, for lack of a better phrase, which is okay. So we gathered with Mr. Miller. We went through the 2 different vendors that we had in place to review. The dollars lean towards APC. Mr. Miller is here as part of our conversation. We do have a historical relationship with APC, and we feel that with the changing of this process from not necessarily here every day, but from here as a responsibility for all of the guards, which APC had been until we hired our own SSOs, that they will be able to adequately fill in with their size and amount of staff that they have to be able to meet our requirements moving forward, and that's our recommendation. Any questions on that? Any questions from the community? Okay, there's the breakdown in the spreadsheet as well. That shows you where the responses were associated with that. Okay, municipal lease recommendation. Mr. Fabrizio, myself, and Mrs. Hurd got together. We are recommending a municipal lease. We have benefits of utilizing municipal lease for 5 scrubbers. These are replacing pieces of equipment that are at least 10 years old. Some of them we have no timeline on when we purchased them. With the appropriate backups, components, backup batteries, charging equipment, all of that kind of stuff. It is a 3-year lease set out, and we're working with Mr. Subers. We've received that final paperwork this afternoon, so that was added to the agenda as well with all the appropriate backup. Any questions or concerns on that? Yes, we will own this equipment at the end of the 3-year lease. And it fits within our current budget. As I described earlier, that little component there that we had to add a net figure of $17,500. Mr. Fabrizio has monies in his budget that he's willing to reduce his equipment overall to help offset that cost, bring that into play. Any questions from the board on that? Okay, any questions from the community? All right, thank you. One other piece, just again, the tennis courts were a late addition. As was the late addition for GKO for the feasibility services for the counseling centers. Okay? All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weaver. Mr. Keenan?
All right, I guess. Are we on 510?
Nope.
511. All right, I thought I heard him going through. So okay, so what we heard. We heard 502. Should I one at a time? Everybody's
Nope.
happy with
You could just go
502. So we talked about 502, 503, 504, 505. If anybody wants me to slow down, 506, final budget, 507, approval of 2023-2024 tax rates, big one. 508, homestead, farmstead. 509, security services, we just talked about. 510, municipal lease.
I would request that 510 remain off consent. We just have some minor wording changes, putting in the right party, et cetera, and it wasn't. We just got the lease today, so
Okay.
it'll just
So,
be modified.
any objections for 502 through 509 to be added to consent? Seeing none, that'll be added. 510 will be removed off.
All right, we have 511 now. We've got a motion to approve legal services as presented for Fox Rothschild. Any goes on
Just
to
to help expedite things, since late, are there any objections to adding to consent 511, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26.
No objections. I have a question on the Head Start lease.
Which one?
Whoever does that, 2024.
What's your question?
I'm curious because the assignment language is so open, so very, very open. Is there anybody that talked to MCIU? Are they thinking about bringing in another company to do this Head Start program?
I am not aware of that, but I can
I
certainly
don't think
look
it's a
into
problem really in the lease. I don't have any problems with the consent because there's a 30-day right determination, so nobody has to worry about anything. I mean, we can always terminate it right away. But just curious if they're handing it off to some other company to do this. And it's
Head Start is a federal grant program, and the IU has been awarded that grant for years going forward. So it will continue to be run by the IU.
okay, which is just curious why they have such an open assignment that they can hand it off to somebody else. I don't know why. I was curious if anybody had any information on that.
I don't understand.
Just the
what
way
you
the
mean.
document is written, it says that they can assign this to anybody to run the program other than themselves. In the lease.
In the lease agreement you're talking about, they have the right to assign it to another district to run the Head Start program if they don't want to run it.
Does that mean they can just move it to a different district if we run out of space, maybe? I mean,
This would be another service provider.
They can let anybody else
Run
come
the Head
into
Start
our
program.
classroom and run the program, and we can't say anything. But we have 30 days to terminate, so I mean, it's
And they'd also have to be an approved, under the Head Start program.
guidelines and everything.
You would have to be approved under the federal guidelines for that.
Yeah, so what Mr. Keenan is saying in the lease that we all had,
Just curious. if
that
they were
the lease,
planning
if we
on
sign it
having
and
it
approve it
Friday.
as is, it gives MCIU the right to have somebody else run it on their behalf.
Yeah, and I thought, I certainly still think it's going to be MCIU just running it the whole time, but.
Yeah, and Mr. Keenan, they're required to provide the 60-day notice of that assignment, and we would be able to exercise the 30-day termination within that 60 days.
Yeah, it's very friendly in certain ways. I understand, friendly with a lot of leeway to control what happens, and then just I don't want to sound like we want money. It says right up front, no cost to the district, but they are using district resources and classrooms and buildings, and MCIU has a lot of facilities and pays. And is doing some big facility projects this year, which were just approved and things. And it's just no cost. Are they doing this in, I'm just not aware if they're doing the Head Start program in almost every district, or other districts, or, and why do we volunteer this to them? How does that work?
So the way it works is that the IU sets up an agreement with us, and if we afford them space, they reduce our costs. So we have an intellectually disabled multi-handicapped class here at the high school. We have Head Start at Schwenksville. We have pre-K counts out at West. I think that might cover our IU classes, but in return, we get a break on some of the fees that they would otherwise assess the district with.
That's excellent. Yeah, because they are using our district's resources, and I just wanted to make sure that that's passed on to our students. That's all. That's all
Also,
my only
just note
question.
that the majority of the kids in that classroom are PV students, so it's a helpful program as they enter our kindergarten. So,
Any objections for 5.11 through 5.26 being moved to consent? Seeing none, they'll all be moved to consent. 5.27 was the grant and donations report. And then we'll move on to, thank you very much, Mr. Keenan. Yes, please.
Just the grant and donation report, 5.27, just to clarify, the Games Without Frontiers and Trot in the Classroom, those were not mini grants, those were regular foundation grants. I don't know if it matters, but the mini grant is under $500.
You have that information? Okay. Dr. Kolar, payment of bills.
601 and 602 will be for the agenda next week. 603 will be an approval to authorize payment of bills for summer during the times when we don't have meetings between June 12th and August 14th. If there's no objection, can we put that on consent? And that concludes section 6.
Thank you very much. Professional personnel, Ms. Evans-Brockett.
are there any questions on 7.01, approval to authorize personnel and employment contracts? Seeing none, we can move that to consent. 702, 3 is already on consent. 704 is a placeholder. 5, 6, 7, 8 on consent. 709, are there any questions on the approval to change the job title and job description of the district safety supervisor to chief of police? Seeing none, we can move that to consent, and 710 is a placeholder.
Thank you very much, Ms. Evans-Brockett. Mr. Fountain, support personnel.
Items 801 through 804 are all on consent.
The other two are on consent, too.
806, what did I say?
Through 4.
2806 are all on consent.
All right, thank you very much. Governance, Ms. White.
9.01 is the first reading on policies as listed. And 9.02 is approval to hold a second reading and adopt the policies as listed.
There's only one item I wanted to note on policy 705.2. Since the last policy committee, there was one phrase added under delegation of responsibility, the second paragraph. dealing with school police officers will become involved in incidents. At the recommendation of administration, we added except in exigent circumstances in the event that there was an imminent threat of injury to persons or property. We wanted the SBOs to be able to intervene without an administrative recommendation.
Any questions on that? Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. White. Comments from the audience? Timer.
So I just want to touch base again on the idea about the windows and the doors and stuff like that. Part of my logic behind that is because if you've ever seen anybody try to get through something like that, it's going to make it tear them up to the point where they're not going to be able to get through. And honestly, if we're really here to protect our kids, that's a very effective way that we should be seriously considering. These windows up here, same thing around any building in the district. I think would be a very smart thing to do. I noticed that a lot of the administration, like the principal's office up front, has it already on their internal windows and doors. It's kind of odd that it'd be internal, but I think it's something we should definitely check into for sure. Last thing I just want to talk about is just touch base on some more of what I was speaking about earlier. This same individual is also misgendering and potentially outing this family member of mine. They continue to refer to this person by a different name than they see me referring to them in the email. Now, if my child was actually, if this family member of mine was actually in danger, they could have been put at risk. If I was some sort of transphobe or anything like that, this person could have definitely been put at risk by just outing them like that to a parent. The other thing I want to talk about is this person also has been making transgender comments about some other students there as well too, saying that a friend of their family member should look more like a girl, dress more like a woman, things like that, when this person clearly has chosen not to do those things. So it's boggling because they don't seem to stand for what they seem to claim. They also informed their family member they should never get in my car, even though they've never actually spoken to me. I don't even know why they would go there, but they're clearly seem to have some sort of obsession with me. I'm not sure quite what that is, but I'm not sure. Again, my family member has been trying to negotiate and come to terms with conflict resolution in the school to try to come fix this problem. The other party is completely uninterested and will not even sit down to speak about things. So I think that really shows you the nature of this person as well too. The last thing I want to talk about is that the Daniel Boone School District, because of the impersonation online and claiming that the person has worked there since May of 2010, is now doing an investigation, and that's actually considered fraud, and they could potentially lose their license. So that is being brought up to the state board. We will be having breakfast with this individual, as my team likes to do, starting on the 18th at 7 a.m. And last thing, I just want to make sure the same person is also very likely the person on the board that went behind the board's vote to take masks away from children back, Doe versus PV on the board. They actually decided to testify for the plaintiffs in that one against the board at that point, trying to reforce the mask specs on the kids. Just so this is who the voters should know this person is on the board, and we really need to have them removed.
Say something now or no?
Right. I just want to note that with respect to certain allegations, through my representation of the Daniel Boone Area School District, I would dispute some of the representations that were made.
Come to order. It's fine. Anyone else like to give a everyone, does anyone else would like to make a public comment? Yes, thank you. We're going to let her go first. Just bring that thing down. Yeah.
Oh no. Okay, even more. Okay, that's lovely. Hello, my name is Ria Shringari from Trap Borough, and I'm the class of 2023 treasurer. I'm just going to discretion advise because this is kind of a heavy topic about suicide. So, since middle school, the dull ache of depression was constant and never left my side. And I came to bear the unbearable to make my friends, school, and parents happy. I told myself I needed to keep up a positive image so I could be a good leader for our class. I simply could not let my friends, parents, or classmates know even the slightest thing wrong with me. I did not have the level of support I needed from the school, let alone outside of it. Nobody noticed the warning signs, and while I'm incredibly grateful for the teachers and staff that did support me, it wasn't enough. In September, right when junior year started, I decided I would end my life and make no mistake with it. I was resolute and devised a carefully thought out plan, discreet to everyone. On December 13th, 2021, I almost succeeded in committing suicide with a near fatal overdose. In the hospital bed, I had accepted death. Somehow, I made it back to school and reintegrated into life as a student. The pain I endured led me to the edge of existence, where I teetered on the precipice of giving up. But here I am, standing tall, well, not really, but a testament to the power of resilience and the strength of the human spirit. We are a community bound by shared experiences, both light and dark, and it is in our unity that we find strength. Each one of us has the power to be a lifeline, a beacon of hope for someone who is drowning in the sea of despair. We must be the voice that tells them, you are loved, you are valued, you matter. It is a responsibility of the school board, our administration, and every person in the Valley to foster and nurture self-love and compassion, so everyone needs to do better. No student or person deserves to go through what I went through, and I know we have the capability as a district to prevent it. Life is not just about surviving. It is about finding meaning in the midst of chaos, about turning our pain into purpose. The everyday people of PV, the janitors, the teachers, the office and counselor secretaries, the aides and subs, the lunch ladies, and every student in between. These are people I love with every last fiber of my being and have loved for the past 13 years. So I implore you, carry the spirit of compassion in everything you do. Let us be the embodiment of love in a world that so desperately craves it. And in doing so, let us pave the way for a future where our community thrives, not just surviving, but flourishing with an abundance of compassion. Thank you.
Anyone else? Comments from board members? Dr. Kolar?
Just to echo what Mr. Schaefer said earlier, I attended the Food Truck Festival. It was an amazing event, so thank you to the art department, and also Mr. Schaefer, thank you to you. Best of luck to you after graduation. We've enjoyed having your voice here at the table.
Anyone else? Seeing none. Notice of the video recording disclaimer, and 10.04, I will rule adjournment. I hope to see everyone on Friday.